Hey everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PCDIY hardware live stream. I think this is episode 114? Hopefully everybody's having a good Friday and now things on a positive and productive footing, getting ready for their weekend. So hopefully for those of you going to have a good Friday night and a good weekend, best to you in that respect. For this week's stream, we've actually got some really exciting products to be able to go ahead and touch on a little bit. Very excited to actually be able to give you guys a little bit of kind of an update in terms of something that we had a soft announcement at CES. So we already talked a little bit about the upcoming Intel NUC 14 Pro. Of course, if you guys are not aware now, of course, the NUC ecosystem, which previously used to be, of course, executed by Intel, has now been brought under the ASUS banner. So now we have the ASUS NUC ecosystem of products. And so we've been getting ready to kind of roll these out. So we're very excited about actually 3 new items that are going to be coming under the ASUS product line, where we're going to have, of course, the NUC 14 Pro, the NUC 14 Pro Plus, as well as the long-awaited and I think very interesting ROG NUC. So we're actually going to be talking about the 2 new items, because last week we talked a little bit about, of course, the NUC 14 Pro. We're going to talk about the Pro Plus, and then we're going to talk about the ROG NUC. And then, because we don't have too many other items, we're actually going to get back to the PCDIY Builder Spotlight for 2024, so we'll definitely be touching on that. So all the way around, I think we're pretty excited. Let me go ahead and drop back the audio right there, make sure that we're good on that side. So let's get ready to go ahead and see who we have joining us on this week on the stream. Let's see who we've got here. We've got Critical Error Computing, man. Fantastic to have you. I think I haven't seen you on the stream in 2024. So man, happy New Year's. Thanks for joining us. And if you guys haven't checked them out, Critical Error Computing, a great actually system integrator who actually does some awesome builds and is also present in our PCDIY community, which if you guys are not part of, make sure to go ahead and check it out. It's linked in the description below. We've got Erica joining us as well. Always fantastic to have Erica joining us here on the stream, and thanks for letting us know the audio sounding good. Lano C's is checking out, man. Fantastic. Hope you're doing well. You sound a little sick. No, I'm all right. Maybe not necessarily the most sleep, but I'm doing pretty good, man. Thank you for asking. If you guys actually want to check out a great recent review also of one of our graphics cards, Lano C just finished reviewing our actually latest generation ROG Strix 4080 Super base graphics card. So if you're looking for a premium card that is built to the nth degree, has outstanding cooling, great clock speeds, looks fantastic, and I'd love to see what's Wes' thoughts on there right there. But I think overall the best constructed cards on the market. Feel free to go ahead and check out that review. A great overview with a lot of performance testing. If you guys want to check it out, make sure to go ahead and check that out at Lano C. We've got Pella also joining us here, man. Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. We've got Michael joining us as well, so thank you for joining us. Su Min also is joining us, and GP Stuntman, man, fantastic to have you here. Thanks for joining us here on the stream, and Tech also, thanks for joining us here on the stream. So let's get ready to go ahead and kick things off. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever it might be, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the comment section. We'll do our best to go ahead and check that out as we go through. Quick feedback right there from Lano C's review. He gave us a little bit of feedback on that question. So his thoughts on the ROG Strix 4080 Super. It's a monster. So hopefully a monster in the best way possible. I'll take that. It is definitely a big card, but it definitely gives you a huge degree of performance. So again, if you're looking for a card that's going to be cool, quiet, and fast and built to a great degree, definitely check out that review from Lano C. All right, guys, let's go ahead and kick things off first with UEFI BIOS updates. So we've actually got a very big set of updates, and I don't think last week I touched on these. So I'm going to go ahead and touch on 2 sets of updates, because I think respectively between last week and this week, there's probably close to something like 200 odd plus UEFI updates. Now the majority of them are pretty much going to be segmented towards Intel based platforms. So those of you that are on the Z690, Z790, Z790 refresh, of course B660, B760 based chipset, are probably going to find these updates going to be most applicable. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I think the first update that I'm going to go ahead and touch on is, if you guys remember a bit back, I talked about actually an upgrade for our UEFI to kind of further solidify and enhance support for 256 gigabytes. And I think, of course, you guys, we asked previously, how much memory are you running in your system? Now, the vast majority of you probably watching the stream, you're probably a general user. In most situations, you're probably going to be doing, gaming, mixed productivity, general desktop use. So really, for most users, you don't need more than 32 gigs. 16 gigs, really, even for a lot of systems, is pretty good. But, depending on how much you actively run, you may find that you're going to maybe be a little bit constrained. But 16 is actually quite usable in a lot of situations. situations, and 32 is definitely more than enough. With new non-binary memory kits too, you also of course have odd kit configurations where you've got 24 and 48 gigabytes. So there's a lot of different choice: 16, 24, 32, 48, and now of course 64. Although generally when you start to go into a dual rank memory config, you're talking about lower memory speeds. But with DDR5, one of the really cool things was of course to be able to have much higher density. So for those of you out there that are in that maybe more professional camp, using your systems for productivity, for science and simulation workflows, for virtual machines, for so much more, you might be excited at looking at those densities of 96, 128, 256 gigabytes. So we've released an enhanced level of UEFI support and interoperability and compatibility for DDR5 for 256 gigabyte configurations. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what this would look like for this board in question. We're going to go ahead and use for reference on this update the Z790 creator board. Again, if you want to see the entire list of motherboards that did get their corresponding update, make sure to go ahead and check out our PCDIY group. We'll have a featured post announcement which have all the corresponding updates there, but we're just going to use the creator as a reference. If you head over to the support section for your motherboard, as always, you can check this. Also, pro inside tip, if you're not aware, you can actually check out a lot of the service and support information for your motherboard if you download the My ASUS app. The My ASUS app is supplemental to our Armory Crate software suite, which of course many of you are probably familiar with, but it allows you to actually be able to kick off things like RMA support tickets, be able to actually run some diagnostics on your system, collect additional information as fine, also have corresponding links for things like our service and support site and critical other updates that are released. So if you want to be able to kind of get a more comprehensive kind of level of support for your product, consider downloading that My ASUS app. From there, you head over into the drivers and tools section. You're going to click over into BIOS and firmware, and then you'll see we actually have two different updates. So this motherboard is going to allow us to actually talk about two of them. Right here, you're going to see that we recently released this UEFI to be able to go ahead and drop in 256 gigabyte memory support. And this will continue to be improved upon. Keep in mind that there are different memory IC providers. So the most common generally on the market are going to be Micron, you're going to have SK Hynix, and you're going to be Samsung. As things continue to evolve, you'll continue to see more and more forthcoming updates, but we're very excited to, as being the world's largest motherboard manufacturer, be able to offer comprehensive support for whatever your kind of configuration use case might be. You can do that. And this update has been rolled out to the vast majority of boards. So for more often than not, you'll probably find a board that already has this update been issued to it. The second update is actually going to be right here, and you will denote that it's designated under beta, so that means that there will be a finalized version that will be released after complete qualification goes through our QVL lab. Now this update is specifically for disabling a feature called CEP, and it's specifically for those of you who might be running a CPU part that is a non-K designation. So probably more likely if you were to look at maybe like a motherboard like the ProArt B760, right? Because of course your Z series chipsets support overclocking the CPU, B series chipsets do not support overclocking the CPU, although they do support overclocking the memory. For those users that might be utilizing a non-K series CPU, like a 13900 versus let's say a 13900K, or a 14700 versus a 14700K, allowing you to disable this actually CEP parameter can actually even provide a higher level of performance. So it is essentially a toggle that is exposed there within the UEFI that if you're looking to even get better performance from your system, you can go ahead and do that. So if that is something that you find interesting and of value to you, then you can go ahead and complete that update. Do keep in mind that for anybody that does apply this update in general, because it contains new microcode, as always, there's a lot of guidance that we provide in our UEFI BIOS updates, again, that are posted in the announcement in the PCDIY group, that gives you insights into understanding what happens when certain microcodes get implemented. Because microcodes can bring in a lot of additional information, they can change auto rules and other parameters. More applicable to overclocking, again, with this being a chipset that should not necessarily focus at overclocking, less of a concern. But anytime you change microcode, you may have to reevaluate if you have a manually defined kind of tuning parameter, if that tuning parameter needs to be redialed in specific to that new microcode, because like I said, those changes can affect the the stability of that tuning. So that is just something to kind of be mindful of. So overall, two big updates in that regard, and like I said, pretty much that applies to most of the Socket 1700 series motherboards. So again, if you're looking for more updates on that side, feel free to go ahead and check out the link in the description to our PCDIY group and our featured UEFI BIOS post announcement. Okay? Let's see if we have any quick questions on that side, and let's see if anybody noted how much memory they're actually running in their system. Okay, let me go ahead and see right here. Speed Racer Media is asking, is there an update for the ROG Maximus Z790 formula? Yes, it did receive that update. So all of the ROG boards got that. So whether it's the Formula, whether it's the Hero, the Dark Hero, the Extreme, they've all received that update. Again, you don't need to apply that update if you're not considering running those higher density memory configurations, or you're not running a non-K-series CPU. For probably most users that are running something like a Formula motherboard, they're going to be running a K-series based CPU, so it wouldn't be applicable to you, okay? But if you want to download it, yes, it has been made available there, okay? Michael goes, how can I get my hands on the service manual for the ROG Maximus Z790 Extreme? Manuals you can always download directly from the service and support website, so if you need to access them, just head over to the actual manuals and documents section, and then you can see right there. It is important to note that there's 2 different manuals. Sometimes there can actually be more than 2. There can be 3, or there could even be 4. Say, for instance, here on this Prime board, you can see that there's an actual UEFI manual. Then there's a RAID manual, and then there's the primary manual, which most users would utilize, which will be the actual user manual right here, right? So if you need to download the manual, you can just download it directly from the services and support website right there. Is there an update for the Maximus Z790? Yes, as I noted, these updates that I just talked about are all applicable, but again, you know, pretty much all of the Z790 series motherboards at this point, I would say, are what we would define as being feature mature and functionality and performance mature. So if you've already been running one of the recent UEFI updates, there's no immediate reason for you to want to update it. Also, especially with something like an Apex Encore, where you're doing performance tuning, you want to definitely be cognizant that the auto rule values changing from one build to another could be conditional based on the experience of your configuration. So that is always something to evaluate. So I would strongly recommend, if you consider flashing, take advantage of the fact that that board has a dual BIOS design, right? So you essentially could have one build on one BIOS, and then you can have another build on another BIOS to be able to do kind of A and B testing if you find that being useful, right? I'm not sure what you mean by service manual. There is no service manual that we provide to users. The actual end user manual, which includes all of the technical documentation from specifications, you know, layout configuration, and all those points, that is provided to there. Anything that we might have beyond that is an internal document for us. It's not to provide to a user-based perspective. So if there's something you find that isn't documented within that, I would recommend you reach out to the service and support team for further clarification on that. So Tech lets us know that he's got 48 gigabytes as far as the memory. Okay. Did anybody else note any additional there? Cheeky Web goes, hey Jay, did you mention last week's stream that the PG32 UCDP would be expected in Q2? Is this still correct? Because the website says H2. Yeah, I mean, excuse me. Right now, I would still say that's our resident target is probably Q2. Now, Q2, it's variable. I didn't say kind of beginning of Q2, or it could be late Q2. You know, it's just that's right now our estimate target. Based on the last discussions and feedback that we've seen with our team, I would still just say in Q2. I would say, you know, continue to just watch the stream and watch our PCDIY group for updates in terms of giving a more specific timeline. Once we have a better timeline expectation in terms of when production is kind of complete and when we're getting ready to push out to the channel, rest assured we'll cover it here in the stream. We try to be really active in terms of providing that information, that forecasting. Also, we'll work with our community manager who helps to also run in our PCDIY group to also probably message that out in some other communities, as we know there's a lot of people that are interested in that display when it gets ready to launch. But as of right now, that's still a bit out. It's not any time in the immediate future. Right now, of course, the most immediate display is, somebody already asked for, is going to be the PG32 UCDM, which of course already launched. And as I previously noted, we're still a couple of weeks away from seeing the first stock on terms of Amazon show up. I know Micro Center has already gone ahead and started to release the units that they received from physical inventory. And then as far as, you know, refresh, you'll continue to just see refresh over the coming days, over the coming weeks, resident to, of course, inventory. We'll try to see if we can get maybe some more concrete information, although keep in mind, restock information is always a little bit complicated, because when we talk about receiving a product, that's only one part of the process. What we can't control is going to be the logistic pipeline when it goes out to our channel partners. So different channel partners are going to have different timelines in terms of them receiving the product, processing it, and then actually putting it out in terms of inventory for the users to be able to purchase, whether that's going to be physically on a brick and mortar location or on the e-tail side. And that can really be variable. It can sometimes be a couple of weeks, and sometimes it can actually be upwards of a month. It all depends on the logistics on a number of different degrees of the channel partners that we're working with. So all we can generally provide you is a clarity on essentially once we've received product from our production end to our primary kind of hub, which is going to be in terms of our North American headquarters, and then from there getting out to our channel distribution partners. Okay. BIB goes, I missed the PG32 UCDM drop by 10 minutes on launch day. I've been waiting so long. Yeah, I know it's hotly anticipated, and the best I can tell you is that it's going to probably continue to be a very in-demand product. I mean, in our estimation, we're of course biased, but we think we have the best, all-around high refresh rate, 4K QD OLED based monitor on the market with the PG32 UCDM, and we know that a lot of people are very excited about that. And like I said, we're pushing to try to get as much inventory, and I expect that, like I said, we're going to continue to scale up and see broader availability as we get closer towards the end of Q1 timeframe. But I think realistically, even working up to that, it's going to be a very in demand. It's going to be difficult for everybody that wants one to be able to get one, right? And it'll take a little bit of time in terms of getting everybody to that point where they can kind of feel like, hey, I can just go ahead and pick one up, and that's just because this has been a hotly anticipated product. But rest assured, we're very aware that a lot of people are definitely interested in it and working our best to be able to try to meet the demand. Okay. So let me go ahead and see any other quick questions right there. Sundari goes, as I got the ROG Strix 4080 OC in white and I'm loving it. Yeah, that's an absolutely beautiful card. The overall white shroud design I think looks absolutely fantastic. Even having, of course, I think the white, of course, that you have for the fans, of course, with that beautiful, of course, backplate design. That's a stunning card. I'm a huge fan of course, that white design aesthetic that we have in there. If anything, I know some people wish that we made the ROG Strix version in a 4070 Ti as well, as right now we only do the white in a 4090 and a 4080, but we don't do it in the 4070 Ti. But you never know. As of right now, we're still deciding those things, although we did do, of course, the 4070 Ti Super in white and introduce that under our Tough Gaming line. All right, guys, so with that, let's get ready to go ahead and jump into our first new product right here. And feel free, if anybody's got any questions there, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into them as we get them. See, we got one other unit user that did come in a little bit right here. 64 gigabytes. Gotta love Chrome. I can have all my tabs and play games with no issues. Yeah, 64 gigs. It's definitely a bit overkill. I think even if you're a heavy multitasking browser, and I sometimes in some situations, although it's interesting. I know a lot of people are Chrome pimps. I haven't actually used Chrome consistently in over a year and a half. I really actually do like Edge, and then if I go to a secondary browser for general use, I really like Mozilla. I do actually test out Opera as well, the new actually GX browser. If you guys don't know, ASUS actually did collaborate, and we have an ROG edition of actually the Opera based browser, which is pretty cool. Maybe I'll drop that in the link. They've got actually some really cool features that have been baked in there, which are pretty interesting, pretty cool. Let me see if I can go ahead and bring it up here. But yeah, it took, I think, Google quite some time to be able to further enhance overall its kind of memory utilization and footprint. And in the last couple of builds, they've actually significantly improved upon that. They've gone to better management for idle tabs and things along those lines. So I think that's pretty sweet. But definitely, I know for a lot of people, memory footprint when you're utilizing, of course, a high number of tabs is a big factor. So having that big memory density can be pretty advantageous. So let me go ahead and see if I can bring it up right here. Yeah, here we go. All right. So yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out, right here, there's the Opera GX ROG Edition based browser. So this is actually something that we did go ahead and work with them on. It's got a really cool UI. There's some really cool layout elements in terms of kind of usability, in terms of information and integration for different types of items. Of course, you do have ORSync integration, which is actually pretty cool. The GX corner is actually pretty nice with release calendar. I know for me, there's a lot of different games that I sometimes try to monitor, so that's actually pretty interesting and pretty cool that they have that actually baked in there. You can actually see elements right here as far as how you can further customize it. I definitely recommend, if you're interested in maybe checking something out, you haven't tried something, browsers is really interesting for a lot of people as far as them having a I would say a very high personal preference, right, over time, and sometimes it can be difficult to kind of pull one person out from one to another. But for me personally, I love trying different ones out, from different usability experiences to the feature set and to the performance. So I'm always kind of willing to actually try some different things out. But if you guys want to check it out, I'll go ahead and drop that link in the chat there. So give me 1 second here, drop that in there, and we'll get ready to go into our next item. Let me see if there was one other question before we get into the next one. When is the Ryujin 3 water block getting released? I want to make a custom loop with an ASUS water block. Coming in the not too distant future. I think probably the release will be before the end of Q1. Just like I said, make sure to keep it tuned. We'll definitely be talking about that as soon as it's ready to actually launch. Pretty much every stream we cover whatever's been new that week in terms of what we're getting released to the channel. So rest assured, we'll definitely be talking about that. We're actually getting our inventory in fairly soon. So like I said, my expectation is that we're probably going to be launching that sometime, I think probably in the middle to the end of March time frame. But again, just watch the stream and make sure to watch out for updates in terms of the PCDIY group for the most up-to-date information regarding the availability for the Ryujin 3 water block edition. Okay. All right, so let's get into our first product here. Let me bring this up. Oh, what happened to my tabs? Okay, well, my tab disappeared right there, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and bring up, I think, the first item, which is going to be here. We'll take a look at the NUC 14 Pro Plus. So last week we talked about the NUC 14, and this will be the actual Pro Plus. So what's the big difference? Well, aesthetically, they are, of course, going to differ a little bit. And so if we actually bring up over some images, let me go ahead and bring up an image right here. You'll see that the Pro Plus is going to actually have a different overall color than the Pro, and the Pro is also going to feature a different power target, and that's actually probably critically one of the big differences between the two. So let me bring this up here. What happened to my NUC 14 Pro? Oh, there it goes. Okay, perfect. Okay. So this is going to be the NUC 14 Pro Plus, and traditionally for most NUC-based units on the market, you have usually been looking at what's called a 4x4 based kind of design, and that generally is going to refer to kind of the chassis and the actual design of the motherboard. This is actually going to a 5x4, and so going essentially to the larger configuration critically is going to allow for essentially a larger and more performant thermal design. And so what you're generally going to be seeing in the standard, essentially the Pro model as opposed to the Pro Plus model, is one's going to be 40 watts and this one's going to be a 65 watts. Now 40 watts is already very performant, and keep in mind this is utilizing the latest generation architecture from Intel, which is actually based on the Meteor Lake architecture, which for Intel they consider probably the biggest architectural change that they've had in the entire history of the company's design. It's also leveraging the prior groundwork that you saw on the desktop introduction side when you brought in a lot of the new technology like DDR5, the thread director, and the P-core and the E-cores. But that's even been further evolved within what you see in Meteor Lake, as Meteor Lake goes to a desegregated base design where you have different essentially portions of the CPU that are designated for certain tasks. Now that critically helps to provide improvements in efficiency, as well as focus performance and flexibility in how you design the part, which was great for the mobile segment, but in the mini PC segment they're going to be able to benefit from this as well. So let's go ahead and take a quick little look at a video right here that we've got for this. We'll dive into some of the general design elements on this guy and we'll kind of go from there. So let me go ahead and bring this one up here. Now I'm very, very excited about this model because, like I said, of the performance you're offering. At 65 watts, you're really going to be talking at the top level of performance that you would see really in the highest end kind of almost gaming grade laptops that you would have. So imagine something in like our ProArt laptops, or imagine like our ROG based laptops, which are going to be using those similar type of class parts. There's also an entirely brand new actually thermal solution that we have in place, and the thermal solution in place is extremely performant to be able to really maximize the performance characteristics of this part. Now this unit will have, of course, different series segmentations for the Core Ultra series processors, whether you're talking about a 5 class or a 7 class series part, right, where you're talking, of course, 16, 22 threads. Imagine that, right? 4.8 to even up to 5.1 gigahertz, depending on actually the CPU part. That's a huge amount of performance. And then even on the GPU side, because you're finally introducing Intel's Arc graphics architecture within this actual package, in this architecture, you also have some very, very, very capable actually GPU performance. So whether you're looking for acceleration within let's say kind of esports related game titles, or let's say, maybe older game titles where the focus of this is not going to be something like the ROG NUC, where you have a discrete high performance based graphics, is still very capable. And while I can't give you the performance benchmarks yet, you'll see that in the not too distant future. I think it'll be very exciting to see the performance, which has already been illustrated by some of the Meteor Lake benchmarks that you've seen on the laptop side. So if you really kind of want to start to get a perspective of the performance that's going to be offered within these units, you can start to look at the performance envelopes that are being shown for laptops which feature the Meteor Lake series. Take a look at different reviews we've done, let's say on our Meteor Lake ZenBook series, which recently launched, as you're going to be talking generally about CPU package powers, which are going to be comparable between kind of that 40 to 65 watt range. That's very exciting. On top of that, if you guys haven't heard, one of the big things that Meteor Lake is introducing is going to be essentially an MPU. So there's a dedicated portion of essentially the die that you have that is for essentially AI-based processing and AI-based workloads. And for some of you, you might be like, well, I don't do anything that's resident to AI. And the exciting part is, of course, more and more applications are now getting some form of acceleration that can work through that MPU. So whether you're using maybe something like Teams, or you're using Zoom, or Copilot, which they're looking to enhance, new AI assistant models, right? There's a lot of really interesting applications, from Audacity to GIMP, right, to Cyberlink Power Director. They're all essentially getting these acceleration components built into them, similar to what you saw in the past with like QuickSync, where you could start to run acceleration or decoding, have that be on a fixed function portion of the CPU, not have it have any performance penalty in terms of your CPU, and then leave that open to other tasks where you really want to use your processing power. So it's very exciting to be able to see a furtherance in terms of not only having improved performance on the GPU side, improvement performance on the MPU side, improved performance on architecturally from the IPC side, more bandwidth from DDR5, and then even high-speed PCIe storage, of course, with PCIe NVMe based M.2 SSD support. So very exciting in that respect. Let's go ahead and quickly take a little bit of a flyover in terms of just the design aesthetic that you're going to see from this model here. So sorry, give me 1 second to bring that up, and we'll show here. And so again, this will be topology-wise, we'll compare the NUC 14 Pro to the NUC 14 Pro Plus. Because keep in mind also the Pro that we previously noted will actually have a slim and a tall base variant, which will be a difference between supporting 2 M.2 SSDs versus 2 M.2 SSDs and a 2.5-inch drive. For this model, you're going to have one standardized base design, but very, very high performance. If you take a look right at the front, you've got 20 gigabits to you right there, 10 gigabits and 10 gigabits. I love the fact that, of course, we've also clearly labeled the speed. So even if you don't know kind of the designations like USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2, which would be 20 gigabits, you actually know what the speed is very clearly, right? When you take a look at the back, you're going to see very robust connectivity. In total, the unit's going to have 7 USB ports, right? So you have 3 there in the front. Then you've got, of course, your Thunderbolt 4 ports that are going to be back on there. HDMI, which includes actually an HDMI 2.1 base specification support, 2.5 gigabit networking, which will include Intel's latest generation 2.5 gig controller with vPro support, which that brings a lot of really cool kind of advanced control level items to it. Another 10 gigabit port right there, a standard legacy 2.0 port, and then of course the thermal based design. Now, one of the cool elements too that has been brought about for this generation, as I noted, is the more advanced thermal solution design, which right now we're not going to jump into yet. Like I said, this is just a little bit of an initial teaser, but it's very, very performant, and it's really well tuned to be able to maximize the performance for this 65 watt based kind of peak target power. In addition to that, you'll also see a brand new tool list design, which has really been simplified and really easy. So you can see pretty much you have those locking mechanisms. You can go ahead and open that up to be able to access the internals, so that if you want to easily be able to upgrade your memory or want to be able to upgrade your PCIe, NVMe, M.2 storage, you can go ahead and do that. For the memory, we've already certified support for up to 96 gigabytes of memory. So that's pretty crazy. You can be running 96 gigabytes in this. For those of you out there in, you know, the virtual machine world, in the Proxmox world, in the kind of the science and simulation, you know, home lab type of stuff, that want to do stuff like, you know, compute clusters, that could start to get really interesting, where you have, you know, high-speed storage, ultra-dense memory configurations, of course, high-speed networking that's also available to you. So it's a quite flexible-based product in that. So you wrap that all together, of course, with the performance and the efficiency that you're getting from that new Meteor Lake architecture, and I'm pretty excited about this guy. So very, very cool part that we're going to have available, and we'll, like I said, have more details. Keep in mind that there'll be quite a number of permutations that'll be available between your bare bone based models and then your finished models. So like one of our any pre-existing mini PC solutions, as well as now our ASUS NUC based solutions, you always have two options. You have the bare bone based option and you have the finished product. The finished product is going to include everything from the, of course, the CPU to the memory to your SSD and the operating system, where the bare bone is going to be where you're just selecting, of course, the chassis, which will define all of the I/O, the CPU, and of course the GPU, which is integrated, but it'll be up to the user to go ahead and select and install their memory, their storage configuration, and then of course accordingly install their operating system. Okay, so that is going to be the NUC 14 Pro Plus. Let me go ahead and bring up the product page for that guy, just so that we can quickly fly over it, and I'll go ahead and share that also over in the chat. So give me 1 second. And let me also go ahead and just see if there's any questions that kind of popped up in there. Let me see right here. Yeah, Douglas, I'll go ahead and note right now in the dimensions for you. No problem. Give me 1 second. So Pele also goes, as I recently upgraded to the 4080 Super ROG Strix card from a 3080, and I'm really happy. I mean, yeah, I mean, one, that is a very performant-based upgrade, right? Plus, you get the architectural improvements. The efficiency is also better, so it's actually crazy because you get better performance and less actually strain on your power supply. So definitely, I mean, if you had the budget for it, is a fantastic card to be able to go ahead and upgrade to. Yeah, Douglas, yes. We will actually, I'm going to be bringing in the PG34 WCDM to kind of dive into our new UI interface. We'll be talking about actually ELMB and BFI, but I did touch on most of those notes, I believe, on last week's stream. So if there's something else specifically that you're wondering about regarding the BFI implementation, feel free and let me know, so I can attempt to go ahead and clarify that for you. So either you can drop that in the chat, you can tag me in the group or tag Lee in the group as well, or if you really have something much lengthier and you kind of want to try to get more specificity on it, you can either reach out to our service and support team, or you can email me at PCDIY@asus.com. Okay. Elvish Kitten, you know, I'm sorry to hear that that's your experience. I mean, if you have something you want to share and provide to our service and support team so that we can attempt to reach out to you, better find out what your experience is and how we can improve upon that, feel free to do that. Like I said, you can email me at PCDIY@asus.com, and I can provide that to our service and support lead so they can review that and hopefully help to, you know, better understand where your concerns are and where we can, like I said, make improvements, whatever that might be. So I believe somebody was asking about the dimensions, so let's go ahead and bring that up here. So you can see we've got the mini PC and we have the Pro Kit, and fundamentally, as I noted, right, you're going to have the bare bone and the non-bare bones. So pretty straightforward. You can see right there one notes with OS and one without OS. You can see for the different CPU configurations, you've got the 125H, the 155H, and the 185H. This Core i5, though, is still very, very impressive in terms of the overall performance, right? For me, I think for the vast majority of users, I would have no issues. Keep in mind, again, you have very, very aggressive clock speed, great number of P cores and E cores. You still get that NPU. You're going to get the ARC-based graphics, so you have the same memory speed support, which is DDR5 5600 support. So unless you really need that even higher level of multi-threaded performance, or potentially the boost in the single thread CPU for performance, then that would designate whether or not you need that i7 or that i9, right? Designation, well, excuse me, the Ultra 7 or the Ultra 9, right? But let's scroll down here to your dimensions. You can see right here in terms of width, depth, and height, so 144 by 112 by 41. Now, if we compare this, let's go ahead and compare this for reference to the NUC 14 Pro that we have, which is, like I said, going to come in two versions, where we're going to have the slim and we'll have the tall. So if you didn't remember last week's stream, we covered them. These, like I said, will be still a fantastic choice, and a lot of what we've talked about is going to be very similar between the two. You're still getting that same Meteor Lake architecture, outstanding performance, the ARC-based graphics, the MPU. It's just the difference here is going to be more on that thermal side, right, where this unit's just a little bit tighter, but still very, very performant. Here you're targeting a 40-watt overall target, versus what we're going to have on the Pro Plus, which is going to be a 65-watt target. And to even kind of add a little bit more wrinkles into this, we will still offer our ASUS Expert Center mini PC, the PN65, which will also be a Meteor Lake based option. Have a little bit more flexibility, be closer kind of this tall model, because it'll have actually a little bit more flexibility for the M.2 SSD support, as it'll support dual 2280 M.2 SSDs, also have 2.5 gigabit networking, Wi-Fi 6E. Really great option that we're also going to have available, but it will be slightly lower in terms of the actual package power. So I believe that one's a 35 watt and this one will be a 40 watt. So this one will still take a little bit more of that performance crown, but that will still be also a really compelling choice. So almost kind of depends on where your budget is and some of your kind of configuration to kind of go which one will be the best choice for you. That PN65, the NUC 14 Pro, the NUC 14 Pro Plus, or if you need to have that highest level of performance, then of course you could consider the ROG NUC, which goes into, of course, a much larger product, even though it's ultra compact, right, at 2.5 liters. You still have that toolless design, but let's go over here and just kind of go side by side in terms of the dimensions. So let me just put those up too, so we can just kind of view that and make it clear for you here. So we'll go into our dimensions. All right, there we go. All right, so again here, if we take a look, this is the NUC 14 Pro Slim, so not the tall model, right? The Slim, not the tall model. You can see right there that that's going to be 117 by 112 by 37 millimeters, right? And then you'll see that when you go with the Pro Plus, because it's also, like I said, that 5x4 base form factor, so a little bit larger, you can see that that will be a little bit of a larger unit. So 144 versus 117, right? In terms of the depth, they'll be the same depth, right? So it's the width that really differs, and then also the height, right? So you can see here 37 millimeters versus 41 millimeters, right? But that will still be a bit more compact though than, of course, the height that you would have on the tall model. And again, remember for that 14, when I denoted that earlier, if we go back over, you can see the difference between the tall, right, and the slim. And the main difference between the tall and the slim is just that this one supports also a 2.5-inch SATA based drive. So here you have a 2280 and then a 2242 M.2 PCIe NVMe SSD support. So a total essentially of 2 drives here or 3 drives here, right? Okay. So overall, those are going to be upcoming. I will share the links in the chat. More information to come. We talked about the NUC 14 Pro as far as, like I said, baseline pricing will start off at around, like I said, that $400 and be moving up depending on system configurations that you're going to have available to you, again, whether it's bare bone or whether it's finished product. Similarly, look for the NUC 14 Pro Plus. Stay tuned for a little bit more pricing information shortly. Again, and that will be variable depending on whether you go with the full finished product or you go with the bare bone based model. Okay. So we're going to get ready to touch here on the ROG NUC, but let me drop these in the chat. Okay, so that's going to be for that one. And then if anybody can go ahead and help to confirm that those actually dropped in okay. Okay, that would be great. Also, some nice feedback there from a user noting about the Opera is great. It says it's actually their secondary browser replacing Firefox. Yeah, I was really happy with it. Very lightweight, very fast. I love its customization and its feature set. I think that's one of the cool things that you see, definitely, especially I think within both Firefox and also within Opera, is that you see a lot more kind of community-based focused development, right? Where they're really trying to be agile at taking in a lot of feedback and usability elements that the community is looking for. Firefox is still a really outstanding option also, especially if you care about wanting to try to maintain, I think, the highest level of control resident to the data and to how different elements of your browsing habits and the things that are kind of being passed through the browser are going to be able to be defined and controlled by the user. So ultimately, lots of great choices for enthusiasts to be able to figure out what works best for them, right? Tech, thanks for letting me know that those links went okay. So let's go ahead and now take a next look here at an early little preview for the ROG NUC. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. So this is not ASUS's first foray in terms of offering, of course, a small form factor compact gaming PC, as even within the ROG ecosystem, we've had things like the GR6, we've had the GR8, we've had, of course, G20. Even on our systems related team also now has models like the G22. But this, I'd say, is going to be closer to the models like the GR6 and the GR8 as you're going for a very, very aggressive, of course, form factor. Traditionally, when you talk about mini ITX builds, most of the time, you're usually looking somewhere between about like a 12 to a 20 liter base chassis design. It's going to be usually within that mini ITX base segment. You can get more compact in that, but it becomes exceedingly more complicated, more challenging to build, and it can also get considerably more expensive, or there can be a limitation on part access as well. So our target was to really try to kind of go with a target volume that wasn't really achievable, I think, by a normal user, right, in terms of that DIY approach and maintaining a very high level of performance that would be in alignment with the ROG-based ecosystem, and that's what we've achieved here with the ROG NUC. So let's go ahead and take a look here and bring up here. I think I've got a little bit of a video file also for this guy, so let me go ahead and bring it in here. And so again here, this is going to be just like the NUC models that we spoke on, where you're going to be getting that Meteor Lake based architecture. You will be going up to even the highest level of what Meteor Lake is going to be offering. So you're going to be having CPUs that will see support up to that boost turbo frequency of 5.1 gigahertz, 22 threads, DDR5 support with 5600 MT based memory, again supporting up to 96 gigabytes in terms of your max memory density configuration. This model will actually support up to 3 PCIe NVMe Gen 4 M.2 based SSDs. Great to be able to also maximize the performance that you would be looking at for the next generation of direct storage, which is now starting to get baked into games and being integrated into the operating system. You can see really cool design elements in terms of our tool list based design that you've seen as a hallmark on our motherboards, as well as we've introduced into our mini PCs. So giving you that flexibility to easily add in additional storage. On the I/O side, you can see outstanding, of course, everything from HDMI 2.1, dual TP, high speed space spec, high-speed UHSI class card reader, Thunderbolt 4, 2.5 gigabit networking, Wi-Fi 6E, all within an outstanding, of course, thermal performance envelope, and very, very compact at that 2.5 liters. A bold and bright, of course, RGB-based design aesthetic there too, and also, of course, integrates in perfectly with Armory Crate and the entire ASUS or RGB ecosystem. So if you have other items like our keyboards, our mice, controllers, other items, it's all going to talk really, really nicely to each other in that respect. You have one software suite to be able to control and monitor everything. So I think this is going to be a very exciting part. There will be essentially two different grades of the units in terms of the configurations. I will be able to give a little bit of the base information where from the system configuration model, let me go ahead and also bring up some images here. We will actually have a target of two configurations. One will be a 512 gigabyte, and then the other one will be a 1 terabyte base solution. So just depending on what your preference will be in terms of the density, then you'll have essentially one drive be occupied, and then you've got still your 2 additional slots. In terms of the memory configuration, again, I believe it was 16 or 32 gigabytes. So again, you would depend on that, and that will kind of segment out between the two. GPU wise, as you noted also there, you're going to have two choices between the 4060 and between the 4070. Now there's still a little bit more information that we're going to have come out there in terms of the maximum kind of performance targets. So make sure to go ahead and keep tuned for that in the not too distant future. But again, keep in mind here that your resident power envelopes are different than on the desktop side. Our goal though is ultimately to try to allow for the best performance possible from that mobile based part within this ROG based NUC. So sometimes on smaller laptops or thinner laptops, you generally have a more constrained power envelope, even if let's say the max power might be 115 watts, maybe the vendor might only spec it for like 60 or 70 watts, so you're not even getting the full performance. Our goal is to try to make sure that we can hopefully be as performant or close to that max performance as possible within this ultra compact design as well. So you can see that the unit will allow, of course, you to go in a traditional horizontal positioning, or you can go vertical. The choice is yours. It supports both, and we've designed it to be able to work equally as well in both configurations. You can see that high-speed UHSI class card reader, and that would support both your traditional SD cards as well as micro SD if you had an adapter. When we take a look at that back there, right there, of course, you've got more high-speed I/O. You've got your USB 2, 2.5 gig networking. That, of course, 40 gigabits with that Thunderbolt 4 connectivity. The HDMI and the DP. For anybody that's wondering, yes, you can run multiple displays. Totality, you can actually run up to 4 total displays off of this system if you wanted to have 4 displays from that. Very easy toolless-based design in terms of being able to open to access to not only clean the heatsink assembly, because of course if you're keeping it maybe stationary like a console or something like that, you get dust, debris, and dander like that. You want to be able to hopefully easily be able to access the inside, clean it out, make sure you're maintaining performance over time. So that is something that we've also accounted for and integrated in there. It does come included with this base. Now, one cool thing that I'll note on this base that you might not realize, it's actually a metal base and it's fully weighted. So it feels quite rigid and quite solid, because if you think about it and you kind of put it vertically, if that base wasn't weighted and it didn't feel quite sturdy and rugged, then every time you were kind of plugging something in and out, you would kind of feel it move about, and that wouldn't be really an ideal experience. So I was really happy about the actual design, that kind of from top to bottom, from that base as well as from the unit itself, that when I went to go plug in something like a keyboard or a mouse, it felt really nice, really consistent. Or even if I was just subtly pulling in something maybe like USB-C for your wireless IMs, which, hey, these are the brand new ROG Cetra True Wireless. These are going to be coming up very recently in a stream, and I've got my sample here and we'll be talking about them. I've been very, very happy with these guys. Performance is really nice on these, especially with the new direct audio design, and I love that USB-C low latency based audio solution, along with, of course, the multi-point Bluetooth that's supported on this model, so you can do it both ways. But if you plug that in, it's going to be nice and stable. It'll be very consistent, so very cool in that respect. So that is going to be the ROG NUC. H2O is asking the price, and so haven't 100% finalized that. Right now I can tell you that it will, of course, depend on whether you're going to go with, like I said, the 512, the 4060, right, and then the CPU-based configuration. I think right now, tentatively, you're going to probably be around that $1,500. I think there might be a model that might be a little bit below that, and it kind of will start to go up there to a higher price point. Now, from a performance perspective, I think probably realistically, you don't need to really be going to the highest end CPU configuration to be able to get a great pure gaming performance. This being an ROG product, I think that's first and foremost the intent. You're already going to have very good cache frequency, really great balance in terms of thermals, more than enough threads to be able to manage not only games but general desktop applications. So I think the question more comes in that if you want to go to the higher spec base CPU configurations, right, do you have specific workflows where you're going to need that higher end CPU configuration? Okay. Is the ROG NUC powerful enough to run Autodesk products like Maya and Unreal? Unquestionably, yes, no problems. When you consider that the package power performance is actually going to probably be better than many of the high performance laptops that users would be buying specifically for application workflows like this, yes, you can be very comfortable. And keep in mind that the GPU equally supports both types of drivers. So the default driver that is actually being that would be installed on the unit would be the game ready driver, but it would also support NVIDIA's creator driver, right? So that's going to be their studio driver, which has ISV certification for applications like those from Autodesk and Maya, Unreal Engine. So if you want to be able to even have better precision, better detailing, stability, or specific acceleration in those actual applications, you can also leverage that. But yes, you'd say you would have a really great experience. The other really cool part is you still also get the ARC-based graphics, and you also still get the NPU. And take, for instance, like Unreal has already mapped in NPU-based acceleration for things like mesh modeling, right? That you're importing in from data that can be accelerated on the NPU. So it could be in a really interesting situation where you're getting the benefit from the high-speed memory, from the storage, from the CPU, from the NPU, and from the GPU, all giving you a really robust experience. But yes, this would definitely be a very competent and fast performing system for a wide range of workflows that might not be purely gaming, but they can also be in the production workflow. So even though this is an ROG derived product, similar to what we see probably within our ROG laptops, and even within people that have also bought other kind of ROG desktop components, we see a wider range of people that consider it because they're looking for high performance. So hopefully that answers your question, Lover Link there. Okay. So I think that's the main items right there. Let me go ahead and quickly just bring up a couple of quick notes that I want to note on here for the ROG NUC. So give me 1 second here. And I'll do that. So give me 1 moment here. I want to bring this up. So I want to show specifically the kind of the two main models that you're going to have here as far as available to you on the CPU configuration side. So I want to show this to you just so you're aware. Again, these are both just like the other models that we've talked about, where they're going to be utilizing the Meteor Lake based Core Ultra series processors. So these are the latest generation, highest performance based processors, along with, like I said, that APU and the ARC based graphics. I want to go ahead and show you guys here just what you're going to see in terms of that differentiation, like on the processing side. So if we bring up here the two models that you will have available, one is going to be utilizing the Core Ultra 155H, and then you're going to have another one which would be the Core Ultra 185H. Okay, and so when we take a look here at what we're going to have for frequency and processing, right, you can see total cores right there 16. E cores are going to be, excuse me, P cores are going to be the same at 6. The E cores, right, are going to be 8. You also, of course, you have your hyper-threading, and then you have your new low power efficient cores, which are there kind of in that background for additional tasks, right, at 2. So you can see a total there is 22. So total 22 threads there. Very high level of performance. Really where you're going to see that differentiation is going to be, of course, in the frequency. So 4.8 gigahertz and then 5.1 gigahertz, right? Now, as we know, the majority of games tend to not only benefit, of course, from IPC architecture, but they also benefit from cache and from frequency. So most games generally are right now optimized from as little as 1 core, 1 thread, up to about 4 to 8 threads, right, in that range. Most titles. There are some game engines that definitely start to use multiple threads across the totality of your CPU, but that is going to be on the rarer side. So in this benefit, you would get a little bit higher performance from an FPS side if you had the 5.1 versus the 4.8, but this will get you, you know, a very, very high degree of performance already. When we also kind of drop down here, let's go a little bit more. Hold on. This is the other item that I want to talk about right here. So give me 1 sec. It's going to be, as I noted, the NPU, right? And so here you can see, compared to some of the other models, and keep in mind that we also actually offer AMD-based mini PC solutions, AMD-based laptop solutions. For the AI-based acceleration items, all 4 of the most kind of common instruction sets are going to be leveraged on there, so that gives you also the best degree of kind of support if that is something that you would potentially be also running on the unit right there. Lover Link will be there 48 or 4090. Right now, don't ever say never, but right now there's no plans. The only model that we've actively designed and developed and that we're looking to bring to the market is going to be, as we noted right here, with the 4060 and with the 4070. So again, everything is always a balance, that even if you can put in a higher performing part, just like what we've done when we had like a you know, smaller laptops that might have had something like a 4090 in them, we always have to balance is, can you fully maximize the performance benefit of that part, right? Because if you can't provide it the correct amount of power and ensure that the thermal performance is met there, along with the acoustics, because nobody wants something that's going to be hot and loud, that doesn't really provide you the experience that you're looking for. So I think for us, going with the 4060 at the 4070, ensuring that they're offering their kind of their peak of their performance, is that best balance of really making sure that you're getting very good performance, also keeping a reasonable power envelope, keeping good thermals, keeping quiet operation, all of kind of the things that I think help to make sure that this is a very, very good experience when you use it, as opposed to being like really great performance, but it happens to be loud, or it happens to consume even more power, or it starts to, get larger and larger to be able to accommodate those design footprints. At 2.5, it is quite compact already, so you could argue that, hey, maybe you would be fine having it even still be like a 5-liter system, but being able to have even higher level of performance. And we'll definitely be monitoring feedback from those that, are looking for other options, right? But as of right now, this is what we're targeting for the ROG NUC. Okay. All right. So that covers that. Let me go ahead and just lastly check on one other note there. And if anybody has any other questions, if not, then I think we'll get ready to jump into the ASUS PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So very excited about that. So give me 1 second right here. And also take a little bit of a drink right here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so just as I noted, guys, just taking a look a little bit at the confirmations, right, for the varying models. Keep in mind, again, depending on the models that you're going to be going with, and right now we do tentatively potentially have a bare bone based configuration alongside the system configuration model, right, that will also affect that pricing. So when I kind of gave you that initial kind of price parameter, keep in mind that, again, you still need to account for generally the bare bone models will be cheaper, right, of course, because they won't come with the storage, they won't come with the operating system, and they won't come with the memory, whereas, of course, the system related product will carry always a little bit more of a price point because you are going to be getting your memory, your SSD, and your operating system. Okay. All right. Let me see one other question. Rob says, my ProArt 4080 OC seems very balanced for the smaller size. Works great in my Strix Z790 ITX build. That's exactly why we designed it. Worked very closely to be able to talk to our team about having those ProArt series cards. We designed them to hit a 2.5 target slot design. That was specifically done so that for creators, they could still utilize 2 of them on a motherboard to be able to have accelerated GPU workflows or GPU compute-based workflows. But also, it really benefited a lot of the people in the medium form factor and the small form factor community because the GPU was much more compact than other 4080s in the market, so they could easily fit that in there. It still was a large enough mass on the cooler design along with the triple fan to keep it cool and quiet. So yeah, it is a great card in terms of being compact, cool, quiet, performant, looks quite nice. So man, thanks for being Team RG and for Team ProArt. Flying PJ goes, any release date for the NUC 4080 Super? Actually, not too distant future. We should probably getting ready to launch that one sometime in March. That'll be coming up. We're also currently working on getting ready to seed that out. Although you can expect, of course, the resonant performance to be very close to already what we did with the prior NUC 4080. This is just the update for the 4080 Super, right? Again, really what our goal is always with the NUC series is to be the coolest and the quietest within that segment of the market. So if that's something you value, again, the NUC will be an outstanding choice in that regard. Just keep in mind it is a very large graphics card at 4.3 slots, so you do need to ensure your chassis can readily accommodate that. But yeah, that will be coming out before the end of Q1. Okay. Tech goes, where do I find the submission for the PCDIY Builder Spotlight? Let me go ahead and show you guys right now. So if you guys are not aware, I can show you how you can submit, but it's pretty straightforward. If you want to go ahead and get in on it, all you need to do is just head over to our PCDIY group. It's an amazing community that we have of over 51,000 PCDIY builders. You'll find that there's actually a link and a submission form in there. You can just go in there, click on the link, drop in your information for that, and then we can have you featured on the build. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a new build. It could be an old build. You could have built it 3 years ago. The only key requirements, as you noted, will be seen in there as far as having to have at least an ASUS-based motherboard. We do ask for a couple of different type of photos. You don't have to be an amazing photographer. Hey, if you take a little bit extra your time though. That's always appreciated. Again, we have people that are submitting their builds for their very first time. People that have built 20 systems have submitted. Air-cooled, water-cooled, mini ITX, ATX, it doesn't matter. As long as it meets that criteria of having the ASUS hardware in there, we're good to go, and we'd love to be able to show it here on the stream. So feel free to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and tackle one more question, and then we'll jump into the PCDIY Web Builder Spotlight. Let's see if we've got one other question right here. At JJ, what do you prefer, higher memory speed or lower CL on your computers, or does it depend on what you use them for? It actually does. And very interesting is that even when you talk about the timings on the memory, some people over prioritize the actual primary timing. So an example is even like right here, if I got, you know, this Patriot right here to this team group, which this is an 8000 MT kit of memory, and then right here, you know, I've got this, this is a T-Force Create, here's some Crucial, here's some Patriot, here's some G-Skill. It can get a little tricky. One is that you don't want to get caught up purely in either the bandwidth number or actually in the primary timings. Sometimes actually your tertiary timings and your subtimings could be actually far more important in terms of actually influencing performance than some of the primary timings. Like on face value, you would think, oh, this C34 kit has to be faster than a C36 kit or a C38 kit, and that's actually not always the case. The same thing sometimes resident to bandwidth. Sometimes some of the subtimings can be more critical at affecting the totality of the efficiency and the communication kind of burst pattern that the memory has. And this is where some memory companies have a little bit more dialed in tunings. And you could argue, how are they tuning? Are they tuning for an application performance workload? So are they tuning to make sure they get really good performance in something like in an ADA benchmark versus in a game or versus in an application? So my personal preference when I'm building my own system, because you're asking me what do I tend to do, where I tend to care most about performance is going to be, of course, in gaming. I want to try to get the best performance I can, especially with very high refresh rate monitors. So I usually will favor going with the higher kit of memory, not so much to get a specific value, whether it's timings or frequency, but it's to ensure that I get a very high grade of memory binning so that I have the most choice in how I can manually go in and tune that kit, right? Because I know, like, if I get, you know, this 7800 or 8000 stick, even if I can't run 8000, because most memory controllers can't run at 8000, I can tune this really, really tight. I know that I can get down and I can start to tune in certain kind of tertiary or quad level timings that I might find are going to be important to a performance tuning perspective from me. But I think overall for most users, I think just a sweet spot. So what I tell most people is, like, on the Intel side, I usually recommend, 64, probably like a C34, I think is pretty reasonable, and that's not going to be super expensive. 66 is kind of in that same bracket, C34 to C36 I think is very reasonable. 7200 has also dropped quite a bit in terms of pricing, and the margin for most of the CPUs that can hit that is, I think, very reasonable, and probably you can get a pretty good timing set in terms of that, where that's probably going to be like a C34 or something like that, and again, wouldn't be too expensive. So that's kind of where my recommendation lies. But I do think that for DDR5, you don't want to undercut the value of bandwidth. One thing that a lot of people forget about, and they over focus on just the timing part, is that cores directly correlate to the bandwidth the memory can supply. So for every core that you have, you want to be able to supply a certain amount of bandwidth to that for multi-threaded performance. That's why if you measure multi-threaded performance as you scale up your DRAM bandwidth, you're going to get better multi-threaded performance. So that also somewhat depends on the program you're using, right? Like if you're using a program that doesn't use a lot of cores, you won't really get that much of a benefit, right? But if you do something that does use a lot of cores, then you definitely want to do that. And me, I do a bit of photography. I like to take my camera, take pictures of my dog, scenery, different stuff like that, product shots when I'm doing stuff like that. And some of the programs I use are definitely very multi-threaded, so I like having really, really good multi-threaded performance. But if you weren't maybe doing only gaming, you won't have to rely so much on that frequency, and you could definitely start to kind of balance out, maybe coming a little bit more conservative, and then maybe trying to prioritize a little bit more on the timing side. So hopefully that answers your question there, man. Hey, the one, the only Snef, man, the Canadian Grandmaster himself, one of the best modders and builders in the game, is here. Thanks so much, man, for joining us, Snef. Always happy to have you here. So let's get ready to kick this guys off. We got the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. I'm happy to do it. So let's go ahead and see what we've got as far as for the first build for here. So we've got a couple. We're probably not going to, I don't know if we'll get through all of them. Hopefully we'll see if we can get through all of them. But let's jump into it. So let me see who we've got first up here. And we're going to go with a favorite for me, which is going to be the one, the only AK Mod, one of the absolute best builders and modders in the game. Thematically, his execution has to be there in really a rare kind of stratified category of just bringing in attention to detail, a fit and finish, and level of execution that is really in the absolute best, right? You know, somebody like, again, like Sniff, to me, really amazing in terms of their ability to think cohesively, have a great look and feel that carries through from their colors to their fitment, to the overall polish that they provide into their systems. And so definitely somebody like AK Mod does this perennially. It's just going to be, how good is it? You're never really going to miss when you see something from AK Mod. So let's take a look at it. This build is going to be called Atomic Nuke. All right, let's jump into it, guys. Let's take a look here and see what we got with Atomic Nuke. All right. And wow, okay, so already right off the bat, I'm already loving this. And this is the cool thing a lot of times that you see with AK Mod, right, is when you see the system, sometimes it doesn't even look like a PC, right? And that's the crazy part, is that sometimes you look at a system and you can totally see it's beautifully done, it's been customized, there's fabrication work, but it still looks like a PC. This doesn't even necessarily look like a PC, right? It's just absolutely insane in terms of the detail. When you start to go into all of the subtle kind of, you know, fitment and finish and detail on here, just the degree of what's being executed is absolutely stunning. And of course the color theory is absolutely beautiful with the white, of course, then you have the red, then you've got the blue, and then you've got the yellow. This just gives you really nice color pop and contrast. You have a really nice symmetricalness, which just looks really pleasing to the eye, so I absolutely love that. Then you drop in, and then you see how this, of course, pulls out and then starts to show you the system. And now it just goes to that next level where he's like system within a system. So the exterior just already looked cool, and now we just even made it look cooler. So we've got, of course, right here, a board. It's one of our, of course, our updated refreshes, because you can tell actually a little bit on the ID design for the shroud. I love the color pop and contrast that we have here with the black. Then you've got the orange, and you've got this kind of softer, almost kind of like a, you know, white, and then a little bit of kind of like a pearlescent kind of silver kind of color in there. I just love this color blocking effect where it's, if you notice, you don't have to match everything, but it all works. It creates just a nice dynamicness. And of course this makes sense for this type of build where it's not hardline, but I love even that soft tubing, the ZMT tubing design here, where you got the black and it just kind of offsets there. The cool little choice to actually go with a pump that has a little bit of a minimal display, which is pretty cool. Digging that vibe there as well. And even again, look at this details with these look to be these countersunk screws. This is actually something I've done in my builds for years, and I remember I saw him, I think Nordic 3D, I'd saw that once, and I was like, I called that and I was like, I love when you do even these little details, as I loved adding that little pop of kind of like polish and color finish to my build when I would do these countersunk screws. So I love here that you even have something, you totally don't see this. Is there a reason that this tray needs to be orange, and that orange then contrasts here, then goes up against this white and gives you a really nice vibe and then ties in with all that? No, but it takes it to the next level. And then you have this cool little countersunk screw. It just looks so nice, really elevates the overall just detailing right here. That looks really great. Johnny goes and notes as he goes, great looking one. Sneff is also giving some love right here. It says, just saw this one, it's just insane, right? Sneff also notes, just the amount of work and the attention to details, again, just insane. And I think that's the thing, right? You know, when we ask people here to submit to the Builder Spotlight, especially for the real professional builders, I always try to make sure that I can get that information, because it's crazy sometimes the amount of time and effort that these builders put into it, where, you know, it's nuts that sometimes they do stuff and they're like, you find out that they did it all in 3 weeks. And I'm like, my mind is blown. Wow, you did that in 3 weeks. And then other times they tell you, you know, doing my design, my printing, my fabrication, my painting, and everything, it was 3 months, 4 months worth of work, and you can understand it because of all the little details that are in there, right? We flip around to the back side, and then of course you can see more tubings. You can see this really cool Bits Power kind of distro that's in there. You also of course got your fans in there for your cooling. Love kind of just how it all ties in together right there. I love this little part here at the top, right, where it does have this kind of machinery kind of look, kind of vibe to it, which is really cool. The little struts right here that are kind of holding it all together. I love this illumination at the top, right, that's also been added in, which is pretty slick, right? I love how the Strix card is there. You can still actually see it, that it's not blocked. You know, blocked cards look fantastic, and we're going to definitely look at some builds that have a blocked base design in them when you're putting a water block. But, you know, I think the Strix card has a really cool, distinct stylized design. So it was nice that, you know, he water cooled the CPU, but he left the GPU free by itself. And even that little accent taillight design, I think looks pretty cool for this type of build. And when you pull out, you can kind of really get a sense of everything together, right? Where you can see how this whole thing now pulls out of that, and then it just gets submerged on the inside, right? Very, very cool. Just really impressive kind of vibe. And this is the stuff also that AKA just absolutely goes crazy with, where does he need to do all this little work to, you know, put in the screen, the numpad, you know, take the time to do the duct tape to make it look like somebody's made together their little, you know, bomb with, of course, the rocker switch and all that. That's what he does, and it just looks so cool and so well executed, right? Just really an amazing attention to detail. Just absolutely love it. But then still, even look here, like the integration to be able to still call out the partners and the vendors that he's working with. So, you know, Viper there on the memory side, you can see Bits Power highlighted right there too, right? Really cool. I love just this little, like, totally like hacked together kind of thing where it still looks really clean and polished, where you got the battery right there for the whole thing, right? Overall, just an awesome build. AK Mod, another just, what can you say? One of the best builders and modders in the game. Absolutely fantastic, right? Very, very cool. Pele noting right there, yeah, another just fantastic build. So let's go ahead and bring up his submission form. We'll leave a couple of the images up here while I bring up his submission form. So give me a second here to bring that one up. And what, I don't even know which one, like almost like what do you leave it on, right? It's like in this type of build, it's so tough. So maybe this one, I think this one, can we fit 3 on there? Will it look too stuffed? Hopefully it won't look too stuffed. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so that kind of gives you just, you know, 3 shots of this whole different system. So, you know, you can see it all kind of closed up. You can see the cool little attention to detail there, right? You can see it pulled out right there, all looking pretty cool. So let me bring up his submission form. So let's see what we got right here. So again, AK Mod, if you guys are not checking out his socials, make sure to follow him. You'll be inspired. There's a YouTube channel also. I'll drop that in the chat here in a moment so you guys can go ahead and check that out. Of course, this is not AK Mod's first build. He is, of course, a true veteran through and through. It was a sponsored base build. So the build have a theme. It was an NVIDIA GeForce Garage. Counter-Strike 2 was a game theme focus right there. What are 3 words that he would use to describe the build is huge, real, restoration. Yeah, I can definitely dig that. Does the build have a name? Yes, it's Atomic Nuke, right? So in terms of the core hardware, what do we got rocking in this system? This is a Core i7 14700K, so the latest generation 14th gen series processors on the desktop side. He is using, like I said, one of the newer ROG Strix Z-Series motherboards. So it's the ROG Strix Z790-F Gaming Wi-Fi 2, right? Fantastic board. I think one of the best boards that we have in terms of kind of price to performance to features and spec. Love that choice. ROG Strix RTX 4080, the OC-based model. Of course, not the white edition. He's got the Vapor Extreme 5 RGB memory and non-RGB memory, so it's actually got 2 sets of memory in there. VP4300 Lite M.2 SSDs that is in there. He's also got our latest generation ROG Strix Aura power supply in there, the 1000 watt model. That's a absolutely awesome PSU, super quiet, really the quietest PSUs on the market, and also really nice in the box cables. Then he's got the Bits Power Griffin 120 millimeter fans, the digital RGB based versions. I actually really like those because they just use standard also 3-pin headers, so very easy to integrate into your ecosystem. No custom controllers or anything weird like that. You can just all matrix it into the board. You're good to go. All the water cooling support is all from Bits Power, so it's a Bits Power Summit M Pro with an OLED screen on there, the Leviathan 2 360 Rad, CR360 reservoir, the iStream coolant that he's got in there, and then Bits Power fittings. Overall total kind of cost projection here is about a $10,000 build. What was he most proud of for the build? When turning on and off, it will automatically rise and fall. So that's really cool. So when you turn it on, it comes up, and then when you turn it off, it comes down. That's got to be so cool. Imagine if you had that as your system, that you would just see it kind of come in and out. That's pretty sweet. Is there anything that you would change about the build? The lifting system has always been the direction I wanted to improve on, and I will make it more complete in my next project. Now, that's how you know it's a builder. That's like somebody like Sniff, where I've seen him take his chassis designs or his custom design work, and they're never happy with it like on the first time. They just kind of keep going like, how can I make it better? How can I tweak it? How can I keep refining it? You know, and that's the hallmark, I think, of an artist and somebody that endeavors to try to always keep getting better. How long did it take him to build the system? 60 days for the early panning, and then 7 days for the implementation. The original construction time was 25 days, but then because he had to subtly participate in an exhibition, he only had 7 days left to make it. That's crazy. Again, that's impressive, right? That, you know, you're able to do it in that short of a time. Pretty insane that it looks that good, comes together. So what would be the system used for? It's an exhibition event display and video display. And what is his favorite ASUS function and feature is he's a huge fan of just a lot of our design and our DIY friendly implementation. So things like our Q release, you know, Q design elements that we have on our boards. He's a big fan of that. But I know that he's been a big time ASUS supporter. So fantastic to be able to see that there. So awesome stuff there, man. Great build from AK Mod. Let me go ahead and see if I can drop this one in the chat there for you guys. And we'll get ready to go into our next build here. So give me 1 second. Oh, you know what? Actually, we got some video here. So you know what? I think we gotta do a live little love right here. So make sure, guys, if you can, let's make sure to go to visit him. We're gonna give him a thumbs up right now. We're gonna say it's awesome. But yeah, this is pretty sweet where you can see it kind of all come together. Oh, that's such a cool shot right there. He's got his whole kind of work log right here, but we can kind of see how it's all kind of come together. So again, here is just an example of showing you kind of all the work that has to kind of go through, all the stuff that you don't even realize is being layered in. I mean, look at all that. There's probably like a huge amount of like, I don't even know, this fabrication, probably some 3D printing, then, you know, there's fitment, all these other little stuff that he's had to do. There you can see actually the lift mechanism that he was talking about, right? You know, putting in the cool little decals. Even this, I mean, this is slick, right? They're custom. It has to be a custom sticker right there, right? Because, you know, it's got the little ROG logo on it. And let's go right here. Putting in the final reveal. Let's just see it all kind of come together right there. Wow. He says that he wasn't happy with how that comes out. That looked pretty sick to me. What do you think, guys? I think that looked pretty cool. So all the way, fantastic build from AK Mod, and that lighting scheme, Mal, I love that little lighting scheme that he did there with kind of like the little bit of the, it's not a strobe, maybe it might be a strobe, but maybe he's adjusted the timing delay on it, so it's maybe very subtle, but overall really slick right there. So please go ahead and share your love there, guys. I'm going to drop that link in the chat there, so if you guys aren't subbed and follow them, make sure to go ahead and do that. All right, so Mike Smith goes, now watching an Opera GX, man. Oh, awesome. Fantastic. Very, very cool. Hey, Mods by Men, man. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, so planning to visit his shop when I head over to Taiwan, man. Have a great and safe trip, and hopefully you're able to go ahead and be able to kind of chop it up with him. Another great builder to another great builder, being able to go ahead and check stuff out, right? So very, very cool, right? The Floofy Poofy, oh wow, I just filled out my form in the PCDIY showcase an hour ago. I wonder if my build will be in there. We'll see. I don't know. I've got 5 builds that I went and selected. So let's go into our next build, guys, and we'll keep going it along. So, all right, so let's go into our next one. Give me 1 second to adjust our banner here. And go to PCDIY Builder Expo. All right, so let's go, I think, with a little bit of a different theme. This one is going to be from Ben Nichols, and Ben Nichols decided to not name his system. So you know what that means, guys. When we don't have a name, it means you guys get to name the system. So let's go ahead and see if anybody has any feedback on a name for this build. What would you call this build since Ben did not name it? Okay, so Ben Nichols, and we've got a pretty cool system that will be in here. So let me go ahead and bring up his also submission form. And we'll go from there. 1 second there. Okay, perfect. And we'll go, let's go first with the wide shot. I think the wide shot works best, and we'll go from there. All right, so we got a little bit of that kind of, you know, I'd say kind of a little bit punkish kind of vibes in there with that little bit kind of purple pink kind of background going on there. Very nice, big and bold setup. You can see he's got one of those big monitor setups, you know, that, I don't know, 42, 48 inch or something like that. That looks pretty tight. I might almost maybe put that like on a C-clamp or something like that if I can. And then he looks like he's got his system right there. He's got something else going on. These look like some very nice monitors, so that's pretty cool. So that definitely takes his audio seriously. You can also see right here, he's got some sound material up at the top there, maybe to reduce things like reverb or maybe echo or kind of things like that. So, and then looks like some stat monitoring. So here it looks like we got the star of the show, which is going to be in a larger open frame type of system. Very cool. I actually had different systems like this. I'm always a fan of kind of seeing what people's interpretation is with an open theme. You know, it's cool. You don't have to always have everything inside of a normal chassis. Sometimes it's cool to just be able to kind of let things hang out and be a little bit more freeform, a little bit more fluid in terms of kind of look and feel, right? So I can tell right now, of course, we're already using the Apex series board, the first version Apex. Of course, it's white. With the Apex Encore, it was black. So it definitely means somebody cares about performance here. And that's very evident where you can see we've got massive dual radiators, right? With all these radiators and all these fans, you can of course see that you're really focusing on trying to give yourself an ultra high level of cooling performance, quiet operation, and really care about clock speeds, which makes sense. You don't get an Apex unless you care about clocks. So hashtag more clocks, hashtag more megahertz, hashtag more FPS, right? That's what it's all about right here. It's cool symmetrical vibe in terms of actually the dual actually reses right there. That's pretty interesting. I think the silhouette design that we have right here also in terms of kind of the lighting, it's kind of cool. It kind of gives you a little bit of a central lighting vibe right there. I can kind of dig that. And then from here, you've got, of course, your nice block that's there. So I also like the soft tubing. I think the soft tubing actually plays well here in terms of just kind of giving a little bit more of an industrial kind of vibe to it. To be honest, I don't know if you needed kind of the screen. I kind of feel like maybe the screen takes apart a little bit, but I don't know if maybe you're hiding some stuff behind the screen. So if you, because that's always the challenge with a more open frame chassis, you don't have a lot of spaces where you can hide your cables. So you have to be really smart about where you layer stuff. So in some ways, maybe you could be hiding something a little bit behind that screen. So I'm not opposed to it. I think it looks cool, but you know, for me, I kind of feel that maybe kind of disbalances just a smidge. But overall, really like the color theory again in terms of the white, then with the black. I like that he went with, of course, just the little tips right here from the Chromax accessories to be able to add that little contrast right there. And pulling it here, you can see, of course, where he's mounted it and everything. Overall, really cool. This is a performant, clean, well-executed system. Of course, the vertical mount, it makes sense, of course, for this type of design as well, right? And now out here, so this is something, if you guys didn't notice, check this out. He's even got his memory water-cooled. So pro tip for those of you who might not actually be aware is that with DDR5, especially with non-binary based memory, actually temperature can be pretty important. Once you start to get into like 60, 65 degree range, you can actually start to get abnormal instability and actually reduce bandwidth performance. So in my testing and actually testing that we found initially is that it's quite interesting. You could have kits that are like 1.34, 1.4, 1.45 volts that were non-binary, and the temperature would actually be pretty reasonable, although it does vary from one vendor to another vendor as far as their heatsink based design. But non-binary memory is significantly more voltage sensitive and significantly more temperature sensitive. So depending on the frequency and the density of the memory that he's running, it actually could be a very big advantage of helping to kind of more tightly tune the memory and be able to maintain better stability, especially if you're going towards more aggressive frequencies and also driving a higher voltage. So this is pretty rare to, again, be able to see people utilizing some form of a water cooling for their memory, but that's props. Again, it really shows Ben is committed to kind of high level of performance. So he's got his CPU water cooled, he's got his DRAM water cooled, and then he's also got his GPU water cooled. So overall, definitely he's all about the performance. I think well, clean, nicely executed. There's really nothing that I think I would take away there. I mean, it's nicely done. Let's see, we got some feedback right here on the build. So Snef goes, great setup. clean and tidy with a dash of fabulous. Snef also goes Yulbeast. Yeah, so Yulbeast, amazing, of course, chassis manufacturer. They're getting ready to, I think, transition and not necessarily focus on continuing that pathway forward. But for what they were putting out and what they were doing, it was really amazing to be able to see something that was distinct and different, and really, I think, was a great contribution to the community. So a fantastic, innovator and entrepreneur in that respect, and another great company to be able to work with. Right, Mods by Men saying is I like. Tech 505 is also saying that is cool. And yeah, Snef goes, yeah, 2 rads on the bottom, which, as we noted right here, where I said, you got the double stack of fans, right? So you can see 1 rad over here and another rad over here, right? So definitely nicely done. So somebody did follow the trend. They said purple people eater. I can dig that. I like that with a little bit of the vibes. It's got maybe a little smidge more pink than maybe purple, but I think purple people eater, definitely talking about the performance, would be pretty sweet, right? Pele goes, the ear? Is that what the name of the system would be? I'm not sure how that would play out. So JB goes, hey, just want to know why there isn't a regular ROG case. They're either too big or too small. And if ROG is planning out to come out with one that isn't tough. We have discussed this. Right now we have no immediate plans, but it is something that we're evaluating. Yeah, because I know the Hyperion is definitely a much larger chassis. Although I would say the Helios is, it's actually not that large, right? It's heavier, but it's not a super large chassis. But we haven't necessarily come out with something. And I think the main reason why is that every time we've tried to come out with an RG chassis, we have it try to be very distinct and different. We don't just want it to be kind of another Me Too product. But I think in that way, there's a lot of people that have been hoping to kind of find something that hits that kind of balance of being ROG, but maybe is a little bit more broadly accessible. And that's also something that we've been evaluating, as maybe to do an ROG Strix chassis. In the same way we have ROG Strix products as opposed to like formal ROG, right? Maybe that's a direction. So right now, nothing to disclose or nothing to communicate, but it is something we're definitely talking about. So thanks for that feedback, Jay. So let's go ahead and take a look at his submission form, see what we got right here, guys. So this is going to be, again, from Ben Nichols, and not his first build. It wasn't a sponsored build. Does the build have a theme? He actually had no theme. What are the 3 words he would use to describe the build? Is gaming and overclocking. That 100% makes sense. Does it have a name? No. In terms of the core hardware, I pretty much think I covered most of it. And of course, I'm also a big fan of his block. This is an Optimus block. That's what I use in my personal water-cooled system. And so you have an Optimus CPU block, and then I also have an Optimus GPU block. I love just the really clean fluid lines. Although I do think here, there's a little bit of a discorrelation between maybe missing a little bit of lighting on this, almost like maybe I would have had like a backfill, maybe light on the back or rear, something like that, just to give a little bit. But I like also how it pops here. But yes, you've got a TUF 4090 with an Optimus block on there. Then the CPU is going to be a 13900KS, so super bend. The KS are very, very nice in terms of the actual VF curve performance. A lot of people don't realize that your VF curve varies from CPU to CPU to CPU. So even when they say, well, what's the point of getting this? The binning can actually be much better on the KSs relative to the VF curve than it can be sometimes on your standard CPUs. Take, for instance, if you're not aware, like on a 14900K, you can literally have a VF curve that can be as low as something like 1.398, and then you could also have a VF curve that's 1.5. That's actually entirely normal. Literally, if you take 20 CPUs and you measure them, they're not all going to have the same base vid. And this is where sometimes people incorrectly communicate that they're saying, oh, we over voltage your CPU. If your board is running at F5 defaults, we don't modify anything. That's the VF curve that's requested by the CPU. So some people are actually very incorrect in terms of what they communicate resident to what they think is being manipulated by the motherboard, and it's not manipulated by the motherboard. The CPU is the one that's defining the actual CPU voltage, and it varies from one CPU to another CPU to another CPU. Even when it's the same CPU, it is not a fixed VF curve. The VF curve is fused at the factory by Intel based on their binning characteristics. So yes, just some insight there as far as why you might get something like a KS. He's got the Maximus Z790 Apex. The chassis is from Yulbeast, and then he's got G-Skill Trident Z memory. It's a 7600 MT kit of memory at CL36. He spent about $6,000 in terms of the build. What aspect is he most proud of is the complete cooling. So definitely with this type of cooling performance, with these level of rads and this fans, you would expect to have very good temperatures and very quiet operation. Is there anything that he would change about the build? No. And I think with this level of performance, what reason? There's nothing really. I mean, this is all about the fastest hardware you can get, so why would you change any of it? How long did it take him to put it together? About 2 weeks. And what does he use the system for? Overclocking, VR gaming, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Arizona Sunshine, and Pavlov. And then also gaming. So it gave one example of like Metro Exodus. Yeah, I mean, definitely this system can do everything and everything well. And his favorite feature is Armory Crate. One-stop shop to be able to monitor his system, be able to tweak and tune his lighting. No custom controllers required. He can just go in, make his adjustments, and be good to go. So overall, very cool, man. Ben, you get a thumbs up from me. Love the execution. I love the soft tubing. I like the color play that you've got also in there. And I like the open frame choice, man. So great submission, and happy to feature it here on the PCDIY stream. So, oh, hey, got another builder in the house. The one, the only. I don't know if it's John and Ellie, but we got Liquid House in the house. So agreed, JJ. Backlighting behind the GPU would be clutch. Still slaps though. Yeah, I just feel maybe just a little bit something, maybe subtle right there, just because I got a little bit of this color bounce right here from here. And I think that if you could maybe do that, you could also even maybe if you could get really tight in with like a thin SMD strip right there, just to give a little bit of like a accent line, I think could be kind of interesting, because I'm also thinking about when you view the system without any lighting from the back, if that makes sense, right? How would it look by itself? And I think in this spot, I'm just wanted to have just a smidge of something. But again, one of the best absolute builders in the game. And guys, if you guys haven't checked out some of the recent stuff, check it out, because they're, as always, they are killing it, and they've got more cool stuff coming from us as well. So definitely check it out. So let's see right here. Honestly, I would put a bit of a custom ARGB plate on the GPU that has the ROG Strix logo. Yeah, definitely I can see where that's going there, right? This was actually not a sponsored build, just for wondering right there. And Liquefied Mods is, hey all, JJ, love Ben's work here. This case is one of my favorites for sure, right? So overall, very, very cool. All right, so very cool. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at our next build that we've got in here from that. All right, so let's see here. Next one we're gonna have, so that was, we took a look at AK Mods, amazing build. We took a look at Ben Nichols's build right there. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next build. Let's go for something a little bit more everyday, and then we're gonna go crazy again. We'll go with another, I think, really cool and dynamic build. So let's see what we've got here. This is gonna be from Brandon Potter. And again, we've got no name, so that means is, hey, if we got no name, means you guys get to name it. So what would be our name for this build right here? And Liquefy Mods, I think actually we've got one build from you that will be in here, so stay tuned. I think it was your update that I saw that you submitted right here. All right, so this is from Brandon. So let's take a look here, see what Brandon's got. All right, so Brandon's got his setup here. Pretty cool, dynamic setup. I'm liking the, I don't even know, are these cats? Are these little cats right there? He's got a little competitor right there, but we'll give him some slack because he's rocking ASUS where it counts inside the hardware. Okay, it's all good right there. He's got his dual monitor setup, got his keyboard, his mouse, his controller. He's rocking and rolling. This is pretty cool. It's a little vibrant setup. I'm digging the different color plays. Of course, some of this stuff always looks very different in real life than it does, of course, when you take photos of it. I actually like the little greenery and the little trees and stuff like that in the background. That's kind of cool. So let's take a closer look here at the system itself. So popping on the inside, we got a nice, clean, compact build. Definitely a little bit more compact on the chassis, but I still think enough room that we've got a little bit of visibility in there. He's definitely packed it in, adding in a secondary fans in there. I do kind of see, though, where that can kind of make sense, because if he didn't have fans right here, you might have a little bit more of a black space. But that's not something you should always be afraid of either. Sometimes having a little bit of a black void will create a little bit of a shadow space, and that kind of gives you a little bit of kind of a space that your eye won't be drawn to, because in a weird way, if you light this and you have cables that might be more readily exposed there, you will see those cables, right? Well, if it was black, you might not actually see them, right? So sometimes you don't need to kind of light everything, but I think it works. I mean, this is a very kind of symmetrical vibe that we've seen, especially with dual chamber chassis, where we have the kind of these type of fan setups on the top and on the bottom. So I think it works there. You definitely don't need it for the GPU. I'm pretty sure if you actually measured your performance, you wouldn't notice really much measurable improvement in terms of GPU temps, because you probably have much more restriction in terms of the airflow on this side, where you're not really bringing in much air into the GPU, and from an exhaust perspective, it's not really getting a large amount of heat pulling. But I think it balances out the look, so I get it. I like that this is kind of cool. It looks like they did some customization. Like, I don't know if they printed this out or what type of accessory this is, but they kind of modified and they put on like a little plate onto the IO shield, which is kind of cool. But this creates like a cohesive look. So you've got the cohesive look here, and then you got the cohesive look here, and then you got, of course, the little cat, and then you got your cables running through. Overall, I have nothing to critique here. They also got this little right angle adapter, which is kind of interesting to be able to kind of make the cable look a little bit cleaner, minimizing the cable route. I also do like that they kind of swung this under here so that it looks uniform. So there's two ways to go about it. Do you run under the memory, or do you run on the other side? And sometimes that can depend on the cooler and its design and kind of the cable length and whatnot. But I think overall, all of this works. I mean, it's clean, it's well laid out, it's got a cool little color scheme, it's got some personalization elements, which are also nice to see. So I got nothing to critique there on you, Brandon. I think it's good. Do we got any feedback from anybody on thoughts on what they would maybe name the system? Let me go ahead and bring up his submission form here. Let's see what we got rocking and rolling here. And again, this is the great thing, guys. You know, we've shown off everything from AK mods to, you know, Brandon's system here, because we like to try to show off everybody's builds. We don't want to just limit the conversation to, you know, super crazy, you know, custom kind of one-off kind of solutions, right? So Brandon Potter goes, oh, so this is actually, yeah, from the Floofy Poofy. So there we go. So I just saw you were in here, so you can give me some insight, man. Kudos, man. Very, very cool. So does the build have a theme? Is the RGB Emporium all controlled with Signal RGB? So there you go. So he's using one application. Although you wouldn't have to use that. I mean, Armory Crate would be able to power the board and the graphics card. And, of course, Lian Li has a pass-through mode that could also be supported in that. And actually, at least in my testing, I found actually Signal RGB had higher CPU utilization than Armory Crate, because we actually use what's called a UWP application. So it's a suspended program. So when it's not actively in the foreground, it's actually not using memory or CPU utilization cycles. It has an actual idle power reserve mode. But if you want to be able to matrix in other things that have controllers or aren't necessarily supported, then that's where, of course, a third-party program like OpenRGB or Signal RGB can definitely be beneficial. So there can be definitely merit to doing that. So whatever ultimately works for you. Are the three words you would use to describe the build too much RGB? Actually, I don't think this is too much RGB. We've shown some builds that have a lot of RGB, and here actually I think this is pretty reasonable. It's not too crazy. And I also like that you didn't go with like the standard rainbow color scheme. You actually have a little bit kind of a focused color play with, I like the green here, then you've got the little kind of synthwave purple vibe in there. So I like the actual mix that you went with. I think it works well. You got your part list. So let me actually see if I can bring up a part list. $3,500 is your actual budget that you've noted. He actually did do custom design RGB panels. So I guess that's this panel right here and this panel here were custom design. Is there anything that he would change about the build? Is he would replace the Tough Gaming 4070 with the ROG equivalent for improved aesthetics. Actually, I think this looks really nice. The ROG Strix would give you the little tail light RGB, which would be right here, but I don't know that it would necessarily look better. Actually, I think this looks quite nice. How long did it take you to build your system? 2 years to save up, man. Serious props. Definitely, you know, can feel that. You know, sometimes you just got to save up to be able to build up our systems, right? What is he using the system for? It's for streaming and gaming. Games such as Mass Builder, Skyrim, Fallout 4, and Halo Infinite, and Fortnite. So a little bit of everything. Awesome, man. Favorite ASUS function or feature is he's a big fan of the Q slot release design. So that's, of course, the button on our motherboard, which lets you easily eject the graphics card. It makes it really easy to remove and swap your graphics cards. Man, thumbs up. I love what you did right there. Very, very nice job, right? So Liquify Mods that's great info on Armory Crate. Yeah, that is actually 100% true. Yeah, so that is actually something that we baked in quite some time ago. That is a suspended application. So if you can test it yourself, literally. If you open up Armory Crate and then you close it, you'll actually see that you won't be using any active memory or CPUs. There's a lot of other applications that they do use active CPU utilization and footprint. And even actually when you run the animation patterns, in my testing, actually, I found Signal RGB in some cases could actually go. I know they just released an update that reduced this a bit, but in some of our testings, we saw peak utilization sometimes going to 25 to 35%. It was quite notable, where we had a much overall kind of tuned base that we saw from that. So, you know, we're always actively working on that as well, and we're continuing to have some very exciting milestone updates. But let me see some feedback here from Floofy, man. Yeah, the bottom fans are for aesthetics mostly. Yeah, so that totally makes sense. I think it works well, right? Mods by Ben also notes that he likes the color, right? And the name Super Cat, right? Yep. Oh, I like that. Halo Kitty, right? Super Cat or Halo Kitty? I think I want to go with Halo Kitty, guys. I think we're gonna go with Halo Kitty. Let's go with Halo Kitty. I think that's pretty dope because Hello Kitty's awesome and Halo's awesome. So why not put them together with RGB, right? So I think that works well. So very, very cool, man. Thanks for submitting your build, Brandon. I love it, and it was great to be able to show it off here on the stream. All right, so let's go with our next PCDIY Builder Spotlight. We're gonna go with I think. Let's go. We're going to let the community decide. We've got actually a name for you right here. And to the person that will know the name, you can't vote for yourself. Okay. So we're going to either go with a system that is called Pureformance, okay, or the Agony Guild Tribute. Which one should we go with, guys? Which one will be first? We're actually going to feature both of them, so no worries. But which one should we go with? Should we go with the Agony Guild Tribute? Or should we go with the build that's called Pureformance? Maybe. We'll see what those in the chat say. We'll go ahead and give you. And I guess if we go with color theme, one is probably going to say more silver and black with a little bit of a contrast brown, right? And then we've got one that's definitely going to be in that classic red and black color scheme. So what are we thinking? Let me go ahead and get a drink, and we'll let the first person that chimes in that is not the builder we'll go with their selection. All right. Oh, that came in at the same time. Michael or Braun or Liquid. So Liquid went and voted for Agony, and Michael voted for Pure. I think Michael came in a smidge faster for me on my side on the chat. So we're going to go with Pure, and then we're going to go with that. So for build reference, the first one's going to be up from Virtue PCs, and then second, we're going to take a look at Liquefied Mods. So let's go ahead and take a look at Virtue PCs right here. Let me bring up their submission form. All right, and we're going to take a look at here. This is a pretty cool one. Let me go ahead and just get the name in here. All right, and make a quick edit. There we go. All right. All right, so this is going to be from Virtue PCs, the Agony Guild Tribute. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. And a lot of you guys know that I'm always a big fan of the classic red and black color schemes. So let's see what we got going on right here. All right, so right off the bat, we can see we've got red and black, right? We've got a little red there. We got a little black. We've got, of course, the Tough Gaming right there, that little logo. Liking the little fans down there, giving a little bit of atmosphere and vibes. All right, let's pull back. Ooh, we got some custom fabrication work. Looks like a little bit of an insert or maybe some etching that's kind of going in here. Loving that. That's a nice little detail. Of course, some nice continued custom cables that we go in there, carrying through with the red and the black theme. All right. Oh, side panel, we can see continue to further kind of carry this through. Really nice consistency and cohesion into this. And this, yeah, is that, looks like, is it a vinyl? That looks, is it paint? It's really nicely, cleanly done. The lines actually are nicely polished on there, so this is nicely executed. Especially those nice thin lines. It's an art. If anybody loves to kind of just see something, if you kind of follow guys that do freehand pinstriping, I'm always kind of interested to kind of see how something is applied or layered on there, but this is nicely executed right there. We can see then that's further carried through even customization on the actual AIO cooler. Nice touch here. Again, this is a cool thing to see. You know, you can see even though they got RGB lighting, did they add RGB lighting for the memory? No, they went with memory that didn't have any RGB lighting to be able to purposely play a little bit with kind of contrast and shadow and not necessarily have to have everything lit up, right? So it's kind of cool that they just went with clean. This probably looks like flare, G-Skill flare dims. So clean, low profile based dims, no RGB lighting, right? Just nice, clean, and adds, like I said, that little bit of that more subtle kind of shadow vibe to the build. So pulling out right there, we can now start to see it kind of come together. And I like this. You know, some people might be like, I feel like I can't see anything, but that's actually, I think, one of the cool elements, right? Is that kind of it draws you in. It makes you kind of look at it a little bit. Makes you kind of peer in that you just see a little bit of that subtle lighting there at the top. you know, it gives you that little bit of glow, especially with red. Red is one of the hardest things to photograph really, really well, just in terms of kind of how it comes up through sensors and how it gets kind of rendered. But I love that just you have that little bit of kind of soft kind of breathing, almost kind of warmth that you're getting from here on this top side, a little bit there in that pump. You then get that subtle kind of constant, kind of softer kind of red that's coming through on the cabling, and then just a little bit of that breathing kind of coming down from the bottom. I'm digging that vibe where it's not overtly heavy in terms that I can actually see everything from being super bright. But you know, you could make probably both look equally great, but I'm digging kind of the approach that he took here. And we can see right here now, exposed with a little bit more lighting, a little bit more brightness, you can actually see it come together, and you can start to see some of the cool details, right, where you got the fins there from, of course, the cooling solution, the heatsink assembly, the back of the chassis, and now we can see it kind of more come into play, right? Overall, I dig this. This is kind of the kind of the vibe as far as I think the build here. It's really slick. It's got this kind of minimal kind of contrast look to it, which I think is really cool. I like, again, not that super heavy focus. The black and the red is always going to be a classic for me. Even though it's not ROG, we're doing Tough Gaming. Tough has that quintessential, really kind of refined, kind of minimal contrast look to it, which looks great. So whatever color scheme you're going to throw at it, it works really well. But when you keep it, I think, more kind of two-tone, or you keep it more subtle, I think it tends to work really, really well with our Tough Gaming components, and I think that's definitely what's apparent right here. So overall, I'm definitely digging it. Yeah, so Liquify Mods goes, this design is very cool. So yeah, Bones right here says this is a Virtu build, not Virtu. That is a V in his logo. Thank you right there for clarifying that. Yes. Okay, let me go ahead and I'll edit that there in a moment, so give me 1 second. I'll make sure we get that correct for the builder, Mr. Brett Rambo. So overall, very, very happy with that. Let me go ahead and make the edit right here, and let me also go ahead and bring up his submission form. So give me 1 second here, and we'll adjust this. Okay, so just make an adjustment right here, bring up the submission form, and we'll go from there. Upwarded. And now, oh, there it goes. Okay, I was looking for where my edit button was, guys. Sorry. It's the nature of the beast when you do it live sometimes. Okay, here we go. There we go. Bear 2. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Very cool. So let's see what we've got here. Of course, not his first build. Not the first time. Also, Brett's actually been featured on here. He's done some amazing work in the past. He always brings, I think, a very high attention to detail, really clean, consistent level of polish. I love the continuity and consistency in his theme. One of the deepest thinkers also, a lot of times, and when he kind of thinks about, I think, subtle elements to big elements to especially also artwork integration. I think that's been a consistent hallmark that he also brings in, which I'm also always really pleasantly surprised with. So the theme of the build is for a guild called Agony. The owner plays in across several games. The guild has been together for over 22 years. Wow. Anybody in the chat, what is the guild, if you guys have been a part of a guild on anything that you've been, whether it's in raids or in some type of other game, whether, you know, they're FPS or MMO or whatever it might be. Have you been in a guild for that long? It's amazing. That's impressive. They were a world competitive team in the MMO space for also 2 decades, man. So that's awesome. Very cool. So in a lot of ways, like you said, it's a tribute, right? Unquestionably to the time, devotion, and dedication that these individuals put in. So that's very, very cool. What are 3 words used to describe the build? Is clean, classy, and beautiful, right? All the Virtu builds focus on precision machining, quality components, and are truly created to the owners, catered to the owner's hobbies or interests. Yeah, and I definitely think you can see that. And that's definitely a hallmark, very consistent within the actual builds, is you can always see respecting kind of the feedback or the hobby or the interest or the passion that's provided from the person that he's putting together the system build, right? So Agony Guild tribute. Core components that we've got in here is definitely a high performance system, but it's a really nice balance in terms of not being crazy in terms of part cost, but maximizing kind of performance. So I think like in a way, it's kind of like a min-max build, but still done with really great parts and of course, great attention to detail and execution. So 13900K, a tough gaming Z790 Pro board. Actually, that might be a plus. I don't know if it's the Pro. Tough gaming 1000 watt power supply, fantastic choice in there. Love the cables. It's almost a bummer that you lose, of course, the really nice fully etched modular cables that come with that. A tough gaming 4090, so of course beast of course a 4090 in there, cool, quiet, and fast. 6400 in terms of the memory, DDR5 from G-Skill in there. 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte SN850X M.2 PCIe NVMe SSDs. That's all inside an O11 Evo. Then for his cooling, he's got, of course, an H51i Elite cooler in there, and then he's got AF120s that are in there. That's probably about the only thing, and they work. You know, the AF120s I think are a little bit light in terms of their overall performance, but the look I think really complements this in. And also, I know Brett would make sure that the performance targets on everything would make sure this system is cool, quiet, and extremely performant. So I'm never going to second guess him on that side. So let's see, in terms of the budget, wow, very reasonable, $3,500. Yeah, totally. I mean, for all that, it's awesome. The aspect of the build that you're most proud of is the custom metallic red paint on the rear panel. Yeah, so that's what I was saying, man. That is beautiful. When I saw that there on the back, very, very nice touch. I think that beautifully got executed. Anything that would change about the build? No, and I'd agree. I wouldn't change anything about it. I love the way that this turned out. I think it looks fantastic. It's definitely something that would mirror definitely, I think, my type of approach sensibilities. What is the system used for? It's mainly used as a gaming machine, primarily focused on MMOs and RPG style games. Love it. Favorite ASUS function or feature? The entire system is based on the ASUS Tough Gaming line of products, which are rock solid and budget friendly. I would agree, man. It's a great selection for this type of build. So kudos, man. Thumbs up. Love the build. Love the way that it turned out. Nicely done. Michael goes, love the vibe of the build and the custom logo. Liquid House gives some love with legit, right? Aeronox goes, has the Carnex been released in Canada? That's actually a good question. I'll have to double check with our support team. I do not know if it's actually been released in Canada as of yet. Just because it only recently released in the US, Canada sometimes can have a little bit of a longer logistic timeline. So it might be that it still might not show up for about another week or two, because sometimes we can see delays on Canada's side, sometimes going between 3 to 5 weeks. But if you want, either post that in the group or you can email PCDIY@asus.com and I can see if I can check with our account manager team on who our confirmed channel partner is in Canada for its release, and we can see if we can confirm on that availability for there. Okay. No, I'm not actually using the Carnex. I'm hoping to get my next week finally in here so that I don't have to use this other microphone that I've been using. So no, you're not listening to me on the Carnex right here. All right, so let's go ahead and go into our next build, and this is going to be from another person joining us right now on the stream. This is going to be from Liquify Mods. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. I like the name also that we have right here. This is going to be, and I guess also apologies too if Brett is watching that. Apologies that I misnoted the name for you. So sorry about that. Liquify Mods, I like this. Pure performance, maybe. And definitely I know that this builder has been pursuing, of course, that type of focus with his builds pretty much from the beginning, right? And so I think it's really well executed. I really like the kind of the practicality element of this kind of build too. It kind of just speaks to me. I'm always a fan of that. So I'm also always a fan that George here is always willing to share his cable routing images, because we always ask for people to share their images for the cable routing, but not everybody wants to do that, and understandably why, because sometimes it's hard to kind of make them look good, right? And at the end of the day, if you don't see them and everything works, why do you need to share them? But I love when builders are willing to share with us, because sometimes it gives you a reference to, one, make you feel comfortable and be like, hey, that actually looks pretty good, I don't need to be sweating it so much, or two, sometimes it gives you an idea on how to maybe approach something that you didn't know, like I didn't think about routing it this way, or I didn't think about wrapping it this way, or kind of doing this way. So it's always nice to be able to kind of show that off there, right? So here we can see a shot first of the back for the cable routing, and so we can actually see the layout. And if we actually kind of go side by side, you can see right here where he's pulled off the panel for you to give you a little bit of perspective and kind of see how everything's all come together. So you can actually see your power supply in there. He's got all his custom cables. It's all grasped in there. He's using zip ties, right? And nothing wrong with zip ties. I personally don't like to use zip ties. The main reason why I don't like to use them is I find that one, you can risk to sometimes pinch and actually damage your cables if you go too tight, and I think sometimes people do that. Sometimes also pull something out, and also generally because most zip ties can't be reutilized, you have to cut them. So for me, I generally I like using hook and loop fasteners, whether they're thinner or whether they're thicker, and then I will usually color code them. So I'll know like this is specifically going for this line, or this one's going for this line, especially if you can't see them. But I know a lot of people it's really simple to take the zip tie, pull it through, click it, and then you just snip, and you're 100% good to go. And again, with somebody like George, who's a seasoned veteran through and through, I would never worry that he's going to damage his users. But I do tell sometimes users that use zip ties, don't be super aggressive with them and don't go too heavy on it, because you could actually damage your cables, right? But you can see everything wired in there. Overall, cool to see. And again, I just love seeing that kind of the before and after, where you can see he's covered it up, and that makes sense. Hey, you don't see it right there, cleanly laid out. Could still make sure to access everything. It all makes sense. But now let's move into where the focus should be. And so we've got the system. So this show's been interesting. We've had multiple apexes, right? So I know people have been digging that. Love it, because I know George likes overclocking. He's all about performance. This is my type of build that I really love. Is like, I just want it to be cool, quiet, well laid out, and performance oriented. And I don't want to kind of overly focus on aesthetics, if that makes sense, even though this does look really good. But I love the soft tubing focus, because again, soft tubing is it's easier to maintain. You're going to get the same performance. And I also like sometimes the organic fluidity of the lines of a soft tubing, where sometimes I think with hardline it can look a little bit more structured and angular, although individuals like we have here with Mods by Ben is known for adding a lot of curvature and making it look a little bit more fluid, a little bit more rounded, which I think is actually cool, and it's more interesting. I love that he's using the DIMM.2 add-in card, which is great, because it's great for water cooling, because normally once you start going with blocks and putting them on boards, you're restricting your access to your M.2 SSD slots, and you'd have to take out your whole graphics card, and then it becomes a bigger problem. Another main reason why soft tubing is better, because you got flexibility to pull something out, or if it's in a hard line, it's much more of a challenge to do that. So DIMM.2, just pop that out, add in your drives, slot them in to go, and you're good to go. So love this little overangled shot. I love, again, the focus on, the heat killer. Heat killer, absolutely fantastic. Heat killer was what I was running in my system before I moved over onto Optimus, and I still have another system that I have a heat killer in, and I've got another one that's a bits power. So great stuff from them. Love the industrial look. Really think it also really works really well with the Apex-based setup. Love this backplate right here on of course, the GPU as well. Looks fantastic. And as we pull it out right there, that all comes together, and you can see this system, it's built to be cool, quiet, and performant. That's what I get through and through when I look at this, right? I'm keeping that CPU cool. I want max clocks, right? I'm keeping that GPU cool. I want max clocks. And I've got tons of surface area and dissipation with big radiators, lots of fans there. I can keep that fan tuning curve targeted in and keep it quiet. So it speaks to me in terms of kind of a user target and kind of a preference. So overall, man, fit, finish, execution is on point. It's a great performing build, and this is a build that you're going to use every single day, right? Like, I think that's the great thing about it, is even though it's a very high performance system, it's been laid out to be, to me, what's called the daily driver, right? Like, I'm going to want to use this, right? And then even the selection is pretty cool. This is the Cooler Master. I think it's the 700 or something like that. It's got a cool kind of look to it that I kind of like the slat lines that are kind of in there. Kind of gives it a kind of cool kind of vibe there. I think that's kind of interesting. Let me see if we got this kind of angular shot right there. I think that's kind of cool. We can kind of go from there. Let's see. So we got, of course, the person themselves. So let's see what his feedback is. Oh no, don't show that, right? So let's see. Michael says, all depends on the quality of the zip ties. I would say yes. There is definitely some ones that are cheaper and better, but you can still, regardless, over kind of torque any zip tie, and you could still damage your kind of cabling, right? Liquid House says, love this build so much. Such a great daily driver from Liquify Mods. Yeah, he just stole the words out of my mouth, right? Where, yeah, I 100% agree. This is, to me, a daily driver build, a system that is going to be cool, quiet, easy to service, great, like I said, performance, and just does what it needs to do, and also still looks great, right? So Liquify mods themselves adding in, thanks so much. The soft tube bends routes are definitely influenced by mods by Ben and by Liquid House. Wow, man, it's always cool to be able to get props back and forth from other people within the community to get inspired by. So that's fantastic to be able to see that within the PCDIY community. Very, very cool, right? So very cool. Yeah. The CM half 700 Evo is the chassis. So let's go ahead and bring up his submission form here. Let me go ahead and bring this up. So this is going to be again by George over at Liquify Mods. If you guys are not checking him out on Instagram, do that. Follow him and do that, because you will get inspired and you will be able to follow a great builder out there in the PCDIY space. So let's go ahead and see. Does the build have a theme? No, there was no theme. Although I think if we talk about a theme, maybe Liquify Mods, you can confirm. I think it's like, it's about being cool, quiet, and performant, right? And not kind of overthinking any of those things. You want it to be able to do it. You want to be able to have that flexibility to still, I think, tweak it and tune it when you need to, if you want to swap or change or do something to it, right? And so I think in that respect, it does have kind of a theme, but I understand aesthetically, maybe there wasn't a greater theme, right? 3 words to describe the build is performant, clean, and cold. I like that, performant, clean, and cold. Does the build have a name? Performance, right? So pure formance, maybe. Loving that. So it is powered by an ROG Maximus Z790 Apex, first wave, 13900 KS, same thing that we talked about. All right, interesting that the 2 Apex users were both rocking Apexes, right? And also rocking the KSs. 32 gigabytes of Team Group 7600 C36 running at that. He's taking it, bumping up. Hashtag more megahertz, 8000 MT at C36. Very, very nice. Taking it up to that next level. Also running an ASUS GeForce RTX 4090 Tough Gaming with that beautiful block on there. And it makes sense. If you're generally going to block a card, I would usually block a Tough Gaming card and not a Strix card. Be quiet, dark power, 1200 watt power supply. Generally, most of it is water cool in terms of the actual water cooling hardware. That's right, count them 4. That is 4 360 millimeter radiators in there, EK fittings, Aqua computer pump and loop control. Gold standard for the water cooling community, I know, fantastic. And then 19, that's right, count them, 19 Noctua fans in there. But again, Noctua outstanding in terms of their durability, their fitment, their quality control, and their performance are great, right? Budget for the build was around $6,500 to about $7,000. What is he most proud of is the performance. Definitely would agree. Is there anything you would maybe change about the build? Maybe a shiny 14900K. I would say only if you get a memory controller, maybe you can get better clocks out of it. But KSs, in our testing, actually, oddly enough, we saw that KSs generally had sometimes better consistency in terms of their INC margin than sometimes the 1400Ks. And like I said, the VF curves sometimes tended to be tighter on them, but that kind of makes sense to the KSs because they were ultra bend, if that kind of made sense, right? So it would almost be like I would want a better 1400K than my KS, if that makes sense, right? How long did it take to put together the system? 3 days in order to disassemble the previous build, clean all the components, and then redo essentially the setup, right? What is the system used for? Is gaming and overclocking, and he loves the AI features. I would agree. ASUS AIC, it's the one-stop shop to get you started in terms of just tuning your system. It's a great baseline, and then if you want to take it further, you can take it further. So very, very cool, right? The Floofy Poofy goes, there's a lot of Noctua fans in there, must be very windy. Actually, I would say no. Hey George, can you let us know what are you running in terms of the fan curve? I would expect probably with this type of build, either you're on maybe a fixed fan curve or maybe a pretty tight fan curve. I would probably estimate that you're probably not going over like 1600 RPM. So with so much surface area, right, you just really kind of want to make sure you get good static pressure and enough kind of airflow that you can hit through that and then provide that through. But I would actually expect this should be actually very quiet, right? It shouldn't be kind of windy at all, right? But what if you can give us some feedback, that would be cool. So let's go ahead and round things out while maybe George gives us some feedback there, man. Awesome build. Thank you for sharing it. Very, very cool, right? Before I go into the next question right here. So Liquify Mod goes, yeah, never above 30% unless I really need it for a benchmark. Yep. So that 100% makes sense, right? Yep. Absolute silence. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yep. 100%. Back is asking, is ASUS AOC safe to daily do on something like a white Z790 Apex and a 1300 case? 100%. Yes, we actually only use something that's an adaptive voltage. If you want to go back and actually check our live stream that we did on ASUS AOC, we go into really deep dive on this. You can actually, this is a really great feature. Even a lot of people don't even correctly report this in the community, and very few reviewers even talk about it. We have a very cool mechanism because since we have a hardware control on the motherboard, we can monitor the sustained voltage that's supplied to your CPU over time. So if you actually want to get your true CPU average voltage over a month, 2 months, 6 months, you can actually go into the monitor, and the hardware EC monitor actually will report to you the average voltage that your CPU is being given. Because a lot of people focus only on like what they think is the peak voltage, and that's really a bad way to interpret voltage, because with the VF curve, the voltage frequency curve is dynamic, right? It goes up and down depending on the load, the frequency, that's based on the core count. So you can even have it set to like something like 1.5, but that 1.5 only exists for a couple of milliseconds and then it comes back down. So the real actually average might be closer to like 1.285 or something like that after measured after like an entire month of period. So it's very nominally safe. And again, the cool thing is you can go in and you can customize that. If you want to set a custom target for the voltage, you can do that. If you want to set a frequency target, you can set that. If you want to set a temperature target, you can also set that. But yes, you can feel very comfortable. It's still overclocking, and you have to account for what overclocking means in terms of adding degradation to a CPU part. But if you're going to do it, I'd much rather use an adaptive voltage, which is the way that we define our ASUS AOC implementation, than use what sometimes other users utilize, which is a static voltage. Even people that argue saying, oh, I'm going to set a low static voltage, that's actually not necessarily ideal, because the low static voltage is still going to be higher than our lower dynamic voltage in an adaptive vid. Because if you set it to like 1.285, it's 1.285 always. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're browsing the internet, if you're not doing anything, if you're just going and getting ready to shut down your system, it's always consistently that. Where when you're actually using an adaptive voltage, the frequency can drop all the way down to 800 megahertz and it can drop to sub 1 millivolt, right? So if you talk about true efficiency and also reducing the likelihood of sustaining a higher level of voltage being fed to the CPU, an adaptive voltage with a quality VF curve is much, much, much better, right? Yep. How do you enable it? Armory Crate in the BIOS? You can do it either which way. You can turn it on from within Armory Crate, or you can turn it on within the UEFI. They both do the same thing. There's no difference. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and round it out. We've got our last build that we're going to wrap things up with here. Coming in from another great builder. It's been great to be able to highlight so many amazing builders this week in the PCDIY Spotlight. We stacked it a little bit because we hadn't had a PCDIY Builder Spotlight in a long time. So let's wrap it up with our last build here from another great member of our community and another great builder and modder. That's going to be from Justin Chu. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what we've got right here. So this is going to be from, I love this. This is going to be Superman's Candy. What a cool name. All right, so Justin Chu, Superman's Candy. Let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. And I think Justin is always, he always sometimes gives us some video, which is always pretty cool. All right, so here we guys go. Wow. So Justin kills it always. He's one amazing photographer in terms of his photos, does great work. And the lighting is always super on point, but his color theory is absolutely fantastic, does really nice balance in that respect. So love the white and I love the green, and I immediately get the Superman's Candy. Actually, being a big comic book fan, Superman actually also my personal favorite character, and this is actually a little bit of kind of like a an oxymoron kind of thing, right? Where it's like this is bad candy, right? Because it would be kind of kryptonite in terms of kind of vibes, right? But overall, very cool. Really digging the white right here. I love this subtle accenting just visually, and how we have the inverted layout, right, for the board. You've got the RG accent there in terms of the red, right? And then you've got, of course, your block upside down. You've got it with the white backplate, a little bit of that translucentness, these perpendicular lines. And I'm not always the biggest fan of perpendicular lines and distro plates, but I think here, this is the symmetry with the color play all really beautifully go together. I love also the duality of the different color lines that you've got within the Lian Li fans. Even though they've been used so much, they really work well within the angular line kind of feeling of this build, where you have this kind of patterning finish along with the infinity mirrors right there, really come nicely together. And even this little kind of just touch down there. And I love the open frameness, right, where we don't have this, where it kind of goes out, right? It shows you don't always have to play with the uniform perspective of how the system should look, right? Just absolutely love the kind of the subtle things here. And even the choices right here to go with these angular cut kind of Thermaltake dims. That's actually some of my favorite looking dims. The design that Thermaltake did there, I thought was quite different. It had a little bit more of a geometric type of pattern. And if you kind of go and you look at it, the geometric kind of pattern fits really well here, right? Where you've got here these geometric lines, then you also have these geometric lines, right? You of course have the new little display that's also there subtly thrown in there in the back with those new fans in there. I think it just all kind of carries through and comes together really, really nicely, right? So this is of course a nice touch. Of course, this is what you would expect with Justin. Really nice quality attention to detail going in and having the readout information. Of course, having his J Custom logo in there just kind of carries it through. The fitment work, all beautifully executed. I wouldn't expect anything less from Justin, who's done a number of great builds on the stream before. But love the way that this turned out. I mean, it's bold, it's bright, it's really well balanced and laid out. It's fantastic, I think, in terms of its execution. The color theory is on point. The component selection is on point. The contrast also on here is really, really nicely done. I think, again, between the white, the green, the kind of the silver chrome accents, and then even this soft gray, where the soft gray has been really nicely tied in against other items, whether we have a little bit of the soft gray in the cable. Of course, we've got the grommets that are in there. Actually reminds me of the color theme that we had first and foremost on our Tough Gaming GT502 chassis, because originally the Anlee's chassis was kind of weird. It was white, but they had black on the inside, right? And it's nice though that they finally kind of updated it to be similar like ours, where it's white and white interior, and then even have that nice kind of, I think, gray contrast. Because I would prefer that as opposed to everything being white, because in a weird way, some people don't realize when you add another color that's not the primary color, it gives you a contrast to that color and can amplify that color, right? So I really like actually that vibe. I think it works really, really well. Love this angle right here. This angle is really cool. Just seeing the actual distro in front there, even actually seeing all of that work, I just love the way that looks. It's really cool. It's really nicely executed. Oh, it just looks so much cooler when you turn off all the lights, doesn't it? I mean, it looks awesome there. It's hard. It's like, is that this is in the daytime and this is in the nighttime, but there is something really cool when green hits. It hits really cool. That's got definitely it's giving you those feels. It's pretty nice. That's pretty cool. I definitely dig it. Liquify Mods goes, this build is crazy, and like a lot of such builds, a lot of people just realize how much work and detail goes into something like this. Yeah, but that's why it's great to be able to showcase the time and effort that amazing builders put out in there. It's always cool to be able to see it's not even just the time and the effort, but I think the foresight to plan and kind of lay things out. One of the biggest challenges, I think, when dealing with even bigger chassis, like what we showed there with even with Liquify Mods or with this builder, we've shown with many other builders, is there's an art to knowing how to use the space that you have within the chassis and filling that correctly in. Sometimes you want to try to make sure that things are laid out so that something doesn't seem empty or something can feel a little bit more symmetrically balanced, and there's definitely an art and an experience element that can sometimes go with that, and that can be sometimes a big challenge in itself. Just love the way that turned out. So let's see. Oh, we got a little bit of video. Let's go ahead and take a look at here. Overall, beautifully executed, and just overall, man, just digging those vibes. Ooh, that was a cool little transition right there. Yeah, I got a flash of the Superman Crystal Cave. I love it. Yeah. No, I think it's really cool. Definitely, those fans were the right choice to go with here. They just really gonna give you that nice little pop and contrast. And yeah, that's cool right there. I think, again, that look, right, where you have that perimeter-based lighting on the top and the bottom, I think that just kind of takes it to the next level. And then I think he threw in the cat. You know what? And so you always got to have your helpers there, so very cool in that respect, man. Let's go ahead and just throw up the two images right there that I think highlight this really well. So we're going to go with the bright shot, and we're going to go with the dark shot. All right, so let's go ahead and round it out there. Let me bring up his submission form. So this is again going to be from Justin Chu, guys. If you guys are not following him on Instagram, make sure to go ahead and do that. Of course, not his first build. It was a sponsored based build. Does the build have a theme? Focus just on color coordinating green and white. And I think that this perfectly comes through. That's the first thing you get is you get that green, you get that white, you get that contrast, and then you get that beautiful synergy of them kind of coming together, right? 3 words you would use to describe your build is peak 011 life. I can definitely get that. I understand that. Does the build have a name? Superman's Candy. What do we got in terms of core hardware? We've got an Intel 14900K, a Z790 Formula. Then he's got a 4090 EVA 02 Strix block. Wow. He's got an EVA card water blocked. A little bit of a tear comes down, right? But it's still beautifully executed in terms of the build. And he happened to have an extra card, so understand why he ended up using it as a blocked card, right? Using TT Tough RAM. In their DDR5 32 gigabytes. I love the choice of, again, that tough RAM. I really love these, like, look at these little cool things, these geometric lines, this little pattern accent light that they have in here, even this little cross hatching. Really just like those DIMMs. I like the way they look there. They look quite nice. Then he's got 3 2TB 980 PCIe NVMe M.2 SSDs from Samsung, running an ROG Thor 1000 watt P2. Don't need it because you can't even see it, but a great power supply is going to, of course, be cool and quiet and super performance. What aspect of the build were they most proud of is the floating distro. Yeah, I would agree. That looks absolutely stunning. It looks really cool, and it's subtle. Like, you almost don't realize how it's just kind of floating in there. And it's a focal point that it kind of almost comes away that you don't realize how much work has kind of gone into getting that to kind of be laid out and be a focal piece, but also realize that it's not such a focal piece, which is kind of contradictory, but pretty cool. Is there anything you would change about the build? Well, I do have 3 fans that are missing screens, and that was ultimately shortages. I still think it looks fantastic, and I think he picked the right location to put the ones that did have the screens where it made sense. How long did it take him to build the system? Is a weekend. Impressive. But of course, he is a seasoned builder. What is the system used for? It's just general use. And then his favorite ASUS function or feature, and this has changed. We get different people to put in different stuff. This time around, he said, flashback saved me on this build. The formula didn't initially post, but he was able to get everything back up and running with USB BIOS flashback and get himself resolved there. So overall, very cool, right? So wrapping it up, Michael Braun says, looking awesome with all the lights, got a flash of the Superman Crystal Cave. Love it. I would agree, man. So Justin, serious thumbs up. Fantastic way to end out the stream. Beautiful looking builds, and been great to be able to go ahead and touch on them for this stream. So thank you guys so much for joining us for this PCDIY Builder Spotlight and for joining us this week on the stream. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, whatever they might be, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat, or feel free to visit us in our ASUS PCDIY community. We'd love to be able to see you there. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy your Friday, have a great weekend, and we'll see you in next week's PCDIY live stream. Take care. Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.